Am I the a-hole for forcing my stepdaughter to cut her hair even though she loves it? My husband has an 11-year-old daughter from a previous relationship. She has incredibly long blonde wavy hair, just past her bottom. It's a nightmare to take care of. It frequently tangles and she always needs help brushing and styling it before school. I'm not a morning person and I do not like having to wake up early to do a kid's hair. It's expensive to maintain as she requires more products. She insists on using hair oils which can cost around $5 and only last a few weeks. She also insists she has to use curly hair shampoo instead of regular shampoo and conditioner, which is often over $6 per bottle, and she goes through it at a fast rate. She won't use a regular brush on it as she insists it breaks her hair and hurts, so she uses a wide tooth comb which takes a long time to brush when she could be doing other more productive things such as homework or helping me with chores. I decided she had become obsessed with her hair, and I do not want her to become vain, so I decided it needs to be cut. I don't see it as a big deal as I have always had shoulder-length hair as my hair does not grow very fast and I get frequent trims. It's a lot more practical. I took her to the hairdressers as normal. In the car on the way down she said she wants to make sure the hairdresser doesn't cut too much. I politely explained that I would like her to cut her hair to shoulder length as it has become a burden. At first she thought I was joking, but when she realized she started to cry. When we got to the salon, the hairdresser was reluctant to cut her hair due to her tears, but I explained the trouble we have maintaining it, and assured cutting it would be best for her. In the end the stylist agreed and cut her hair. The stylist braided her hair then cut it. She kept it. Her hair was now just past shoulder length, and looked a lot darker. The car journey home was silent. I offered her McDonald's but she refused. She went straight to her room when we got back. My husband went up to see her when he got home and apparently found her on her bed sobbing holding her old hair. My husband immediately called her mother to come and collect her, and as soon as my stepdaughter was out the door, he started yelling. Her mother also came in and gave me a mouthful. I explained my reasoning but my husband wouldn't budge. He said if I had issues he would have done her hair in the mornings and that he didn't mind paying for the products. He was so furious he said he no longer trusts me around his daughter, and doesn't know if he can be with a woman who he doesn't trust with her. This broke my heart.
Teachers of Reddit, what's the saddest thing you've ever found out about a student? That the reason that my grade 12 student was falling asleep during math class was because he was working 40 hours a week to pay his parents' bills. I saw his pay stub. He was a great kid too. When I taught second grade, I had a student who walked kinda funny. It took me about a week to realize that it was because his shoes were too small. I got him some new shoes at Kmart because kids' shoes are cheap. I told him it was so he would be able to run really fast in gym class. I found out he was living with his grandma because his dad was in prison for killing his mom. I started buying him clothes after that. At the end of the school year, I was packing up some boxes and one of them said snacks. The boy looked at me with great big eyes and asked if I really had snakes in the box. I cried over the fact that I promoted a kid to third grade who really couldn't read. I had a very smart kid failing my class because he wasn't turning in any homework. When I asked him why, he told me he lived in a hotel room with 12 other people. There wasn't space, and it was too loud for him to focus.
My boyfriend abuses me and lays hands on me in the name of love, but my friends all tell me I should leave. Should I listen to them? My boyfriend and I have a strong and intense relationship, and I understand that it is not most people's cup of tea. His behavior can be seen as controlling in some sense, as he tells me not to wear a skirt if it's too short or a top which shows too much skin, but I'm okay with it. I think it's very dumb when people cause ruckus about their partner setting boundaries. My boyfriend is a very strong character who stands up for his opinions, leads the way in the relationship, and always has my back. It's his strong character that I love for him, but it's also his strong character that makes my friends dislike him. According to them, he shows toxic masculinity by wanting to be a traditional man who makes the money and takes charge in the relationship, while I stay home and be a housewife and mom. I usually argue back with my friends when they call him this, saying they only think that because social media has brainwashed them into wanting soy boys. You see, it was only recently that my friends found out what my boyfriend is like, and they are now calling him an abuser. I don't agree with it at all. My boyfriend's abuse is doing things like keeping my weight in check. If I put on too many pounds he will let me know, and I truly appreciate it. He also tells me I'm not allowed to have any male friends, and although that hurt at first considering one of my best friends is male, I understand where he is coming from, and he does not have any female friends, so I think it's fair. The real trouble with my friends was when they noticed a bruise on my wrist after I had spent the weekend at my boyfriend's. They were already not fans of him, and once they saw the bruise they jumped to conclusions about him doing this to me. I told them that yes, it was true that my boyfriend had laid hands on me, and as soon as I said that, I was cut off. Every single one of my 3 friends piped up about how I'm now a traumatized victim, should dump him immediately and get a therapist to heal. I argued back, however, saying that this is a victim complex that actually leaves women more traumatized than they would have been. I told them my point of view, which is that when everyone makes a problem out to be huge and traumatic, it will manifest in such a way, which can be very harmful. I got called delusional by my friends and they proceeded to storm out of my house. It almost seemed like they cared more about being right and wanting to portray me as a victim than actually making sure I was okay. The next day while my boyfriend was over at my house, the police showed up and told me they wanted to check in on us. They had received an anonymous tip of domestic violence occurring and had to investigate. We talked to the police and confirmed to them that it was all okay, and I had to lie and say the bruise on my wrist, which was now almost fully healed, was from a skateboarding accident. After they left, my boyfriend asked me what that was all about. When I told him, he flipped out, calling my friends a bunch of narcissistic bitches, and I had to tell him to calm down. He asked me why. I figured that a bruise on my wrist from a rope we used for intimacy warranted police checking on us, and I explained the story to him. He actually laughed before calling them dumb. I know my friends are trying to be protective, but I really don't need any protection.
My stepdad got in a fight to protect me and I feel different about him now. So my mom married my stepdad when I was 14 and we've always gotten along. My dad died when I was 11 and to be honest I'm still working through the relationship we had. I've always had this fantasy that he was an amazing dad, but if I'm honest he taught me things the hard way. He made me scuffle with a 13-year-old when I was 10. When I said I was scared he told me I was being a wuss. When I didn't win he was disappointed in me. When my mom married my stepdad, as we kept to ourselves at first, but he's honestly twice the man my dad was. It's hard to say that, but it's true. The one thing he said to me before he married my mom was that he'd never hurt us and always protect us. It's been 5 years and he's kept his promise. He's always been amazing to my mom and me, and I admit that he spoils me sometimes. He'll take care of my chores for me and gets me whatever I want even if I don't ask him for it. If he hears me talking about something he'll just get it for me. He always asks if I have enough money, and if I don't he'll transfer money into my checking account. We don't really talk about personal stuff, but he's always said I can talk to him about anything whenever I feel like it. Today we were at the store and some older guy accused me of giving him a dirty look while we were in the parking lot. I didn't know what he was talking about and told him I didn't even look at him, but he takes me to the ground. My stepdad jumped in so fast that I didn't even see what happened. I heard him bop the guy, and when I got up the angry man was on the ground looking scared and holding his nose. My stepdad was shouting at him in a scary voice, "You don't ever put your hands on him." He helped me up and the guy got back in his car and sped away. After that he didn't want me to leave his sights in the store. The whole way home he kept apologizing that he didn't step in earlier and telling me he never wanted me to see him fight. I've never even seen get mad or raise his voice. It was scary, but it also made me feel so weird. I can't explain it, but it feels like I finally know how much he loves me. We never say it to each other, but I always knew how he felt. When we got home I told him I love him for the first time and he gave me the hardest hug I've ever had and I almost started crying.
My husband kept canceling my son's job interviews. My son Aiden, who's 23, moved back home after finishing college, just like my husband wanted. The original plan was for Aiden to live with us and help take care of his younger brother, who's 16 and has special needs. Aiden started talking about needing some cash and wanting a job. My husband didn't like that idea. He even offered to give Aiden more money, but Aiden was getting tired of being home all the time. So, for more than a year, Aiden looked for jobs here and there, but he never heard back after applying. We were confused about this until recently. I found out that my husband was the one stopping the job applications. He would wait until Aiden applied, then he would pretend to be Aiden and cancel the applications using his email. I got really upset with him when I found out. He said he did it to make sure Aiden could keep taking care of his brother properly. He thought Aiden was doing a good job with that, and having a job might make it harder. I decided to rent an apartment for Aiden and told him to stay there until he found a job and could pay for the apartment himself. Aiden was really upset when he found out what his dad had been doing. My husband got really angry when he heard about the apartment. He called me crazy and said I was pulling the brothers apart, and that I was teaching Aiden to only think about himself and not family. He also said that I should have talked to him before renting the apartment. He's been really mad about it and is calling me a bad mom for making Aiden be selfish. He wants me to understand why he did what he did. But he won't tell me why. So, for now, I'm going to keep paying for Aiden's apartment.
How has a hospital visit ruined your life? I have 34 had my son in March of this year. My life has been a series of one horrible event after another, but I've always been relatively optimistic, try to find my part in things, and understand things will always work out one way or another. After changing my life and living clean and sober, I met the love of my life, and we decided to start a family. Everything was absolutely perfect, which is something I've ever been able to say. So, March of this year comes around, and I start having contractions. We go to our previously chosen hospital and contact my OB-GYN. Everything went smoothly until the morning after I gave birth. I went to the nursery to breastfeed my son, and was immediately told that I couldn't breastfeed due to a presumptive positive substance test. I was absolutely stunned. I've dedicated my life to recovery, so I knew there had to be a mistake. I requested a repeat test, only for that one to be positive, as well. I was absolutely distraught by what was happening. After talking to my OB-GYN, he stated that the particular psych med I was on often caused false positives. My son was happy and healthy with no signs of withdrawal, and rather than doing a presumptive dipstick test, we could do a more definitive test which would show I was being truthful. Fast forward to that afternoon. DCS shows up due to the positive substance test and interviews both me and my spouse. I happily worked with them, knowing that everything was just a horrible mistake, and they seemed to be very understanding. They sent me out for a hair follicle test, a repeat urine test, and tested my son's meconium, and we waited on results. Later that day, I asked when we could take my son home, and a doctor I've never seen before came into the room, woke my sleeping baby, shined a light in his eyes, pulled him up by his arms, and when he started fussing, she said he was clearly having withdrawal from drugs, and was placed in the neonatal ICU. I explained the situation with my psych meds, and she was less than understanding. Per protocol, I was forced to keep him there for 5 days for his withdrawal symptoms, and every step of the way, I had nurses berating me, insinuating I was a horrible mother and stating that I deserved to have my son taken away, and frequently insinuating that my son was suffering as a result of my substance use. They went as far as giving him morphine for his withdrawal symptoms, because he wouldn't stop fussing. There's so much more to the story about how they didn't feed him. We made them call us before giving him morphine so we could comfort him before they attempted to medicate him, and so many other things, but I'll keep it relatively brief. After 5 days, we took my son home with a safety plan from DCS, and after another 7 days, results of my hair follicle test, quantitative substance screen, and my son's meconium came back, all negative. I never received an apology from the hospital, and to top it off, I was reported to the Board of Nursing due to my profession, and I have since had my nursing license inactivated, am on the verge of losing my job, because I can't legally work, and am being charged almost $800 a week to do therapy, see doctors, submit substance tests, and do nursing groups, all to prove I've been sober. My life is literally falling apart, and I can't find my part in it. I literally showed up to have my son, and things have all been downhill. Does anyone have advice on what I can possibly do? I even tried getting a lawyer, and everyone automatically refuses, because they don't deal with DCS, even though the case was closed and unsubstantiated. Any advice is more than appreciated. I helped a drunk company sing a Beauty and the Beast song. I went to see some London fireworks around 10 years ago for the mayor's parade, and we're all on the bridge waiting quietly for the show to bedazzle us. A tipsy fella and some tipsy ladies were singing Be Our Guest from Beauty and the Beast, but got stuck on a certain bit and couldn't remember the line. Flashback to 10-year-old me sitting in front of the telly watching a VHS of Beauty and the Beast, scribbling the lyrics for that very same song onto some paper. See, my class in school was putting on a Beauty and the Beast play, but we didn't have lyrics. I can't sing for shit, but I'd valiantly offered to transcribe them, not realizing the Herculean task ahead, trying to decipher some of the words. The play never happened, which is a shame because I'd been cast as Gaston, but the lyrics for Be Our Guest would forever be seared into my brain, waiting for their opportunity. One day, and fan my brow, opportunity had finally come knocking, but I was so nervous, I was sweating, maybe even shaking. Somehow the stars aligned and the universe bestowed upon me the courage to help these inebriated revelers who were clearly in over their heads. I waited for someone, anyone, to join in. No takers. It was now or never. I prepped my dodgy French accent and started singing. Life is so unnerving. For a servant who's not serving, he's not whole without a soul to wait upon. It was like a film. People turned around and made their way as I started shakily walking towards them. I kept singing. 10 years we have been rusting, needing so much more than dusting, needing exercise, a chance to use our skills. Most days we just lay around the castle. They turned around beaming. The dude put his arm around my shoulder and we sang the rest of that bit together. Flabby, fat and lazy, you walked in an oopsie daisy. We high-fived, onlookers, clapped, and I shakily walked back to join my mates. They recorded the whole thing, and it is still one of my most cherished videos.
My awful husband cheated on me with his ex-wife and was using me as a nanny for his kids. Now they're refusing to move out of my house. I married my husband 4 years ago and took care of his kids since they were young. Both of them were neglected and had behavior issues because my husband and his ex didn't take good care of them. My husband traveled a lot for work, so he was rarely around, while their mom was irresponsible and sought out her own pleasure. I love the kids as if they were my own, and I've taken an active role in their lives and school. Both my husband and his ex-wife were satisfied with me doing the grunt work for kids since they both travel a lot, and I became the only one who was fully engaged and knew what both kids were going through. My husband and his kids are all living in a 3-bedroom house I inherited from my parents. His ex-wife's place doesn't have as much space as I do, so the kids are here almost full-time, which was fine with me until a few months ago. I came back from an overnight school field trip with my stepson to find a very distraught stepdaughter. She was jittery, nervous, and had been crying. When I asked what happened, she confessed she found her parents together in my bedroom and was upset about the cheating. I was devastated hearing this from her. 4 years of marriage went down the drain in seconds. After some searching of my own, I found out that their affair had been going on for months and possibly a whole year. What's worse is I've been trying to get pregnant for the past 2 years, so we slept together frequently. This means my husband was sleeping with us back to back, and that realization was especially nauseating for me. I confronted my husband about the cheating and let him know I'm going to file for divorce. He barely pleaded and didn't seem apologetic at all. All he said was that he doesn't want this marriage to end, but overall seems confident that I'll change my mind, even after kicking him out of my house. He agreed to a separation and has moved out to an apartment. This situation also affected my stepkids. My stepdaughter was mad at both her parents. She couldn't even look them in the eyes without feeling disgusted by what they did. She's made it clear that she wants to continue living with me. Her parents were more than happy about this. Neither of them are taking any steps to move out the kids, who are still living in their rooms and living their lives as if this family hasn't imploded. I'd have been happy with having the kids with me, but my problem is that both my husband and kids' mom feel at liberty to come into my house whenever they feel like it because their kids are here. She feels no guilt about the cheating and acts as if I am an intruder in this family. She treats me like I am their nanny, expecting me to continue taking care of things for the kids and leaving me with instructions and criticisms. Seeing her all the time reminds me of my husband's betrayal, and it hurts like hell. Meanwhile, my ex comes over all the time, telling me he's just here to see the kids, but keeps trying to persuade me into letting him move back. I love my stepdaughter, and if the circumstances were different, I definitely would have let her stay here for as long as she wanted, but I can't keep living like this. The amount of hurt and anger I feel towards my husband and his ex-wife is too much, and it's painful to have to keep dealing with them. They've been around more for the kids ever since I found out about their affair, and it seems like they're just trying to throw that into my face every single day. The absolute cheek of them to treat me like this is making my head explode. But I don't know what to do about the kids. Everyone in my life is expecting me to suck it up and do what's best for them. Things only seem to be getting worse as the days went by. Just last week, I arrived home to find my stepkids having a meal with my ex-husband and their mom. Mind you, they have never done this before, and this was happening in my home. Their mom just smirked at me when she saw me. I found out she had decided to turn this into a family dinner, set out the food I made, on my formal dining table, with my nice dishes. She had created a pretty family moment with her and my ex under my roof. I completely lost it at that point. I regret to say I behaved abominably, screaming at her and my ex, telling them to get the hell out of my house, and just full-on sobbing, screaming that I hated him and never wanted to see him again. My stepson was really shocked that this happened, and he was pretty much clueless since I had kept him out of most of this mess so far. I decided to spend the weekend with my cousin to get away from all this BS, and my stepdaughter wanted to come. She was very understanding about why I was upset and confessed she hadn't invited her parents. Her mom had shown up and then she invited my ex for dinner. I told her I didn't fault her for what happened, it's just her parents being immature. After we got back, I let her mom know that she shouldn't come over anymore, and if she did then I'll report her for trespassing. She actually laughed in my face and said she didn't believe me. The very next day, she showed up to talk and I lost it. I told her I warned her and then called the cops. They nicely asked her to leave and she did. My stepson was very upset at me for this and asked me why I wasn't letting him see his mom, before giving me the silent treatment the whole day. His mom showed up again acting all sweet and telling me that I am being unreasonable. She said they had made one little mistake and I shouldn't punish her for it because she had my ex-husband first. I became pretty unhinged at this and yelled at her. I called her crazy and demanded she leave. That's when my stepson shoved me and screamed at me to shut up. I fell on my butt and was shocked into silence. His mom was pretty surprised too and left immediately. Whereas my stepson locked himself in his room. He called his dad to come get him, but he was out of town and his mom ignored his calls. I understood what he did, but it still hurt a lot. I hadn't expected him to turn on me. The rest of the week was bad since he was really angry at me and refused to talk. When his dad came back to town, he told him he didn't want to live with me anymore. It took 2 days for my ex to want me to take his kid back, but he didn't want to come back. I told my ex I will not force him to stay with me, and he got mad at me. He wanted me to fix the situation somehow, but it just seemed like he didn't want to take care of his child and got used to me nannying him. When I refused to take his kid back, he said a lot of ugly things, the worst being that he's relieved I didn't get pregnant because I'd make an awful mother. I was heartbroken, but I was glad I didn't get pregnant with his child too. I was afraid of things turning out this way, but I've got him and his ex out of my house, which is such a relief. My stepdaughter will stay with me until she goes to college, and my ex is struggling to find childcare for his son. He is angry at me and I think he'll proceed with the divorce quicker now that he knows I'm serious about kicking him out. Mother-in-law swabbed my children's mouth without our consent. Now, I don't want her at my wedding. Am I the a-hole? My mother-in-law is extremely judgmental and has said she didn't like me or my character because I grew up in a place completely opposite to where they're from. Every time I meet with his family some type of drama would unfold. For example, his mom accused me of touching my brother-in-law's leg inappropriately at his grandfather's funeral even though I just slapped his knee because he told me a joke I thought was funny. But you won't believe what she did out of spite to me. My mother-in-law called and told my partner he needed to swab his mouth to make sure that my children were his. My partner, of course, got angry. My mother-in-law said that my partner's siblings had done it so they wanted him to do it too. He declined to do one, but a month after that, my mother-in-law called my partner and said she needed to speak with him privately. He went outside for an hour to speak with his mother and he came back inside visibly upset because my mother-in-law did the most horrible thing she can do with her grandchildren. My partner informed me that my mother-in-law had swabbed both my newborn's mouth and my toddler's mouth when they had visited. She said that my toddler came back 99.99% related to them, but my newborn only came back 11% related to them. My mother-in-law felt the need to tell my partner so that he could get my newborn DNA tested. Because of that, I no longer trusted her with my children and I no longer wanted her around, but she couldn't understand that. We decided to get a DNA test on our newborn so we could shove the results in her face and we could move on with our lives. Of course, the test came back 99% my husband. She thought we could just pretend it didn't happen but the damage was done. She has not apologized. But she called me to talk out the situation. What she said enraged me more. She said, "I don't understand. Because I've disrespected you so much in the past, why is now different?" I told my partner I did not feel comfortable inviting mother-in-law to our wedding. Am I the a-hole? I'm leaving my husband because I found out that he has been making fun of me behind my back to his ex-wife. My husband, M45, and I, F36, met about 6 years ago. We have been married for 1 year. When we met, I was very fit and athletic. I started gaining weight, however, after suffering 2 miscarriages and the loss of my mother to cancer. I was very depressed and barely got out of bed if not to go to work. I stopped exercising and instead started eating junk food. I gained 40 pounds in 2 years. During this time, my husband was very supportive and loving. I felt guilty and tried to give him an out several times, but instead he proposed and we got married last summer. Since our marriage, I have been feeling much better and it showed. I have lost around 20 pounds so far and I gained back my muscles and abs. He was so happy to see me feeling better. On his computer, however, it was totally a different story. He was talking, almost during our entire relationship, to his ex-wife about me. His ex-wife, F46, left him about 7 to 8 years ago for her colleague. The relationship didn't work, however, and she tried to get back together with my husband. He has already met me, but they stayed friends, mostly via chat, texting, since she lives 12 hours away. My husband was complaining about everything about me. My job, my depression, my cooking, but mostly about my weight. He was telling her how disgusting I was to him, how he even found it hard to share the same bed since I snored like a dog. He sent her pictures of me while sleeping, sometimes in underwear, with comments about my belly, double chin, back, boobs, etc. She found these pictures extremely amusing and she came up with the name White Whale. They both found it hilarious, and now this is what they referred to me as. They don't flirt exactly or talk about being together or starting an affair, but they do say that they miss each other and they reminisce about the time they were married. She's more flirtatious and he really enjoys it. Whatever he's telling her isn't what I have experienced with him. I don't disgust him. He tells me that he loves me all the time. We have great and passionate sex, and the way he touches and makes love to me is so great. He must be a really good actor if he was in reality disgusted by me. And he hates the few times we have to sleep apart. He's lying and I don't know why he's doing it. He's lying to one of us and I'm not sure if I want to know who he's lying to and why. I decided to get out of this marriage and leave this behind me. Right now I'm acting like everything is normal, but I have started looking for a new job in another city, and a place to rent. I also started with birth control pills, in case something happens between us, and I have talked to a lawyer to prepare the divorce and start the process once I'm gone. One thing I'm not going to do is fall back into depression and weight gain. I will not allow it. What a waste of love he has been. What's the funniest thing you've seen an old person do? When my great-grandma snatched a cancer patient's wig. The last time I saw my great-grandmother Claudine. She was 98 and had horrible dementia. She didn't recognize my grandmother, who is her daughter, and it was honestly very sad. We were going to her house because my papa, her husband, died and we needed to go to his funeral. After a 10-hour drive we made it to her house. I rushed inside and overheard my grandma begging my great-grandma to remember her, because my grandma had recently been diagnosed with stage 3 ovarian cancer. I gave her a second and knocked, then walked in. The very first thing Claudine said when she saw me was, "Is that my beautiful Julia?" I nearly cried just from that. My grandma was super happy she remembered me, but sad she didn't remember her, and decided I should spend time with her alone. She went off to go get some food, I think, but I don't really know. So it was just me and Claudine. We chatted for a while and the inevitable question finally came up. Who was that woman in here earlier? That's your daughter. Oh really? Why does her hair look so weird? Oh, it's a wig. She is bald now. I couldn't bring myself to tell her her daughter had cancer, even though she wouldn't remember. She giggled a bit, then attempted to pull me in, and said I'm gonna steal her wig. I laughed. She couldn't walk or lift her own arms on her own, let alone snatch a wig right off of my grandmother's head. After about an hour my tummy started to grumble, so I called my grandma back in and went to the kitchen for some potatoes. After maybe 5 minutes I heard my grandma scream. I was afraid my great-grandma finally had died and rushed in, but it wasn't that at all. My great-grandma did it. She ripped the wig right off of my grandma's head. She told her to come close to whisper a secret and with all her might snatched it. I stayed with my cheating husband for 10 years for that check. My ex-husband and I had been married for 10 years. He was the only child of an elderly couple. I have taken care of his mother for my entire marriage since she needed a caretaker. 5 years ago, I found out he was cheating. We had signed a prenup that said that we would leave with the assets we had come into the marriage with. I didn't have a full-time job because I had to take care of his mother. I didn't get a salary for my caretaking, but I spent my entire marriage taking care of her and her various health issues. It didn't have a clause against cheating. I spoke to a couple of lawyers and they said that even if the prenup is thrown out, which it may or may not be depending on the judge, my husband has an inheritance from his father and can afford to bleed me dry in court. However, the prenup had a 10-year clause. I stayed for another 5 years. Some people chose to stay and reconcile. I chose to stay and make sure I don't get screwed over. I filed for divorce after 10 years of marriage and my husband was blindsided. The assets were split down the middle and I was essentially compensated for the caretaking that I did. He is calling me cruel and calculating for what I did. He is also scrambling because there is no one left to care for his ailing mother. I told him to use his inheritance to actually buy her a caretaker that she can't take advantage of. I have a boyfriend and I'm really happy with my life, but I still get messages from my ex-husband blaming me. AITA?
Why don't you talk to your once best friend anymore? About half a year before us falling out, her boyfriend broke up with her. She was super upset and for some reason completely cut me out of her life. We spent the everyday together and at that point we were friends for 7 years. But I just continued being the supportive friend and messaged her once in a while to see if she was doing alright. She would ignore me. This went on for about 4 months. Out of the blue one day in September she messages me and asks to meet up for lunch. I'm ecstatic because I missed her and we meet up that afternoon. It was good and she told me she was seeing a therapist and we just let the elephant in the room sit in the corner. We didn't discuss her reasons for cutting me out. Then at the end of the conversation, she says that her and her ex got back together. My response was, okay, is that really good for you? I honestly like the guy and still hang out with him once in a while now, but he was not a very good boyfriend to her. He manipulated her, laid hands on her multiple times, made her and her parents' relationships rocky at best, and then cheated on her with 3 different girls all at the same time. However, he claimed he was a changed man and she fell for it. Eventually around October he breaks up with her again, claiming he has found someone better. His place is a few blocks from mine, so she comes over and is absolutely hysterical. I put her in mine and my boyfriend's bed and just hold her for a little and try to calm her down. It was about 11 p.m. and I had classes the next day, but my boyfriend at the time slept on the couch so that she and I could be alone. After an hour or two I got up and went to go get her some water or whatever she asked for. I come back to her swallowing a bunch of pills she had in her bag in a Ziploc bag which was unmarked. I immediately put my fingers in her mouth to try to make her throw up, scream at my boyfriend to call an ambulance, and she's completely melancholic and won't tell me what she swallowed. Ambulance came, she went to the hospital, they admitted her to a psych ward for monitoring, and when she was released she seemed broken, would not eat, would not drink, smoked a lot, and for a few months she was like a puppy and followed me everywhere. I didn't mind and invited her to Thanksgiving, and even preemptively to Christmas with my family. At the end of November, another friend of mine passed away and I'm having a tough time. She refuses to lend an ear and let me cope, claiming her problems are much worse than mine. Fast forward another week, and I get dropped once again. No communication, nothing. It's radio silence from her as soon as I needed a friend to support me instead of everyone else supporting her. A few months later she messages me and says she needs to talk. I think, okay, one last failed ditch attempt. Go to Starbucks near my place, order drinks and sit down. Her first words to me are, "You're the worst friend I've ever had. You're a degenerate and a waste of space, and I hate you for not letting me pass like I wanted. Don't you see, I lost him. He was my everything." I let her yell at me for about 10 minutes, then I'd had enough at this point. I said, when things in your life are going right, when you have a boyfriend, a husband, a family, you'll remember me and how bad of a friend I was for caring about you and loving you. She responded with, "You're just dumb." I dumped my drink on her, iced tea lemonade, which is by far the most dramatic, rude, and actual mean thing I've ever done, and I walked out, blocked her, and have not spoke to her ever since. It's been 4 years, and the mutual friends we had still tell me she asks about me. My female friend confessed her love for me weeks before her wedding to another man. I lost my wife 2 years ago. I have a 5-year-old daughter. I have not dated in the last 2 years because I have major trauma from losing my wife. I still love her a lot and don't think I'm ready to move on. I invested all my time in my daughter and my work to keep my sanity for the last 2 years. I have been friends with Bree since we were in elementary school. We lived in the same neighborhood growing up and were best friends. She is an awesome person, and we were inseparable growing up. The weirdest part was we had completely different personalities. She was very outgoing and always had a lot of friends. I am a big introvert and Bea, along with a few friends, was all I needed. Bree was a serial dater and I don't remember any time since middle school since she was single. Bree and I never dated though. Bree and I also went to the same college. She never had a stable boyfriend but just jumped from one relationship to another. I, on the other hand, did not date seriously until I was in my junior year. When I met my wife, she was a freshman and we hit it off instantly. We fell for each other and spent all our time with each other. This strained my relationship with Bree as I would generally hang out with my wife instead of her. That was the time Bree and I slowly started drifting apart. After college, I moved to a different town for my job, and Bree and I occasionally messaged each other, but nothing beyond that. Bree attended my wedding and that was the last time I saw her. We kept in touch, but mostly by commenting on each other's pictures or keeping each other updated on significant life events. Bree did reach out to me when my wife passed away and we talked on a phone call. Last year, Bree and her fiancé moved to my city. I was still grieving, and both have been amazing support for me and my daughter. My daughter loves dancing, and Bree helped me enroll her in dancing and gymnastics classes and sometimes takes her to them. I also became good friends with her fiancé, who is indeed an incredibly good man. My daughter also loves Annie B, and Bree sometimes helps me babysit. Last week, Bree came to my house and asked if we could talk. Her tone sounded serious. She told me that over the last few months, she feels like she has started to develop feelings for me and is not sure anymore if she wants to go ahead with the wedding. She felt I also had started developing feelings for her. I told her that I was not ready for any relationship before I could deal with my mental health. She tried to convince me that she loved me, we were soulmates, and she felt that we were meant to be together. However, I do not have the same feelings for her. I love her as a friend, but nothing beyond that. We were both emotional, but she said she was glad we talked about this. She left after that. Bree called me that night and told me not to talk about our conversation to anyone. I thought a lot about it and decided that I would not tell her fiancé about Bree and my conversation from last week. I feel it's their relationship, and I do not have the right to ruin their moment if Bree decides to go ahead with the wedding. However, I feel guilty that her fiancé does not know anything about this and is going into a marriage where Bree might not be fully ready for it. Am I wrong for not telling her fiancé about our conversation? Update, a month later. I called Bree after a few days and asked her to meet me for lunch. I talked to her and asked her if she was going ahead with her wedding. She broke down and told me she was not sure. I told her that she should at least talk to Jason regarding her feelings and not be dishonest with him. I also assured her that I would not say anything to Jay, but I just wanted her to be happy. She said she understood and left. That night I put my daughter to sleep and was watching TV. Around 9:30 p.m., I heard a loud knock on my door, and it was Jason. I opened the door, and he was in tears. He started yelling at me and asking me why I had to steal Bree out of all the people. I tried to calm him down, but he just kept on shouting. I was trying to get him to sit down on the bench on our porch. I told him my daughter was sleeping upstairs, but he slowly was getting more and more physical. He punched me in the face, and I was able to push him off. I told him to get out of my house, and he sat in his truck and drove away. I immediately called Bree, and she was crying and did not sound well on the phone. She told Jason that she could not marry him, because she had feelings for me. I was really scared for her, after the physical altercation with Jason, and told her to gather some clothes and get out of the house. She did that and came to my place. I just didn't feel she was safe with Jason. I consoled her for almost 2 hours and was able to get her to sleep. The next morning, we had to call her parents to let them know about what had happened. Bree kept a brave face, but I could see how much she was hurting. Her parents asked her to take a few days off, and immediately come back home, and she did take a flight in the evening to go home. Over the next 2 weeks, the wedding was called off. Bree and I were talking every day and she was just very exhausted. She talked to Jason a few times and kept on asking her to take more time to think. However, I think Bree just wanted to get out of it and decided to just break it off with Jason. Bree has been staying with us for the last 2 weeks. She still has a job here and started going back to work last week. I have talked to Bree in detail about what happened. Bree told me that Jason and her were dating on and off for the last 4 years. Jason is not very career-oriented, and Bree is very good at her job. She felt he was a nice and reliable person, but was unsure about him from the start. She felt that she was not getting any younger, and hence they decided to get married. When she heard about my wife passing away, she just felt really bad and wanted to be around me to comfort me. When she got her big promotion, which meant she could work in a corporate office, she immediately chose my city and moved here. Jason also moved here and got a new job. She never had any romantic feelings for me back then. As she started hanging out with my daughter and me, she started feeling the bond we shared when we were growing up. Except, I was the broken one and she was taking care of me. She said that she realized that she was enjoying her time with us, more than with Jason. She realized she made a mistake with Jason, and what she wanted was right in front of her. Hence, she slowly started thinking about me in that way and finally told me about it. She knew her relationship with Jason was over the moment she confessed to me. It's a bad situation, but I am glad that she realized that before getting married versus after. As for Jason, I feel bad for him. He is moving back to our hometown closer to his family. He is currently in their apartment and will move sometime next month. I know a lot of you would be curious if we were dating. We are not dating. I don't think I can date anyone right now and neither should Bree. She is my friend, and I am happy that she is staying with us, and plans to be here until everything is sorted out. My daughter loves having Auntie Bree around too, so that's a bonus. Plus, it's nice to see her slowly get back to normal. What's the worst reason you've had to go to the hospital for? I effed up my face while attempting to impress a girl at the swimming pool by slamming my head into the side of the pool whilst trying to do a flip. Had to get surgery to remove the pieces of tooth that were lodged in my jaw. I also suffered a testicular torsion that by many regards is one of the worst pains a male can experience. Basically the blood flow to one of my balls was cut off because the blood vessels in my balls twisted together. I study medicine, so I knew what was happening and got surgery before I lost a ball. I don't want a house with my wife. My wife and I have been married for about 2 years and have been renting the entire time we've been together. We've talked about buying a house together in the future, but the problem is that she can't save money. We live in a 2BR apartment because she needs one to be her walk-in closet. She has the newest iPhone, Apple Watch, AirPods, and AirPods Max. She just bought herself a Tesla while I'm driving a 2015 Honda. Don't get me wrong, I'm not complaining. In fact, I'm perfectly okay with her spending her own money because we're both young and she deserves to enjoy her life. Recently her aunt announced that she'll be moving into a retirement community and will be selling her house. Since they are close, she offered to sell it to us before listing it. She wants $75,000 down and is willing to finance the purchase for us. Honestly, it's a good deal, but the problem is my wife has less than $500 saved, so I'll have to pay the entire $75,000. The monthly payments for the house will be more than our rent, so I'll have to cover the difference as my wife can't pay more. Then there's the yearly $6,500 in property tax which I will have to pay for myself. Lastly, the house needs a new roof which will cost $18,000. She and her aunt were talking like it's a done deal, but all I see is a bunch of money I have to pay out all on my own. I told her Friday that we should pass on this one. She kept on saying what a great deal it is and that we've always planned on getting a house to start a family. After hours of discussions, I got tired and told her we will get a house when she gets past her spending phase and starts saving phase. I pointed out all the cost I listed above and she was really hurt. She cried and said that we're supposed to be a team, then went to bed. She hasn't spoken to me since Friday night and we're supposed to go to her parents for dinner tonight. Her aunt will be there and I know the house thing will come up. Am I wrong for not wanting to buy the house by myself?
Am I the a-hole for giving my boyfriend spicy food that put him in the hospital? For context, I am Indian and my boyfriend is white. Before this week, we've never really had any sort of argument, and I was still shocked at how things escalated. I feel bad for what my boyfriend went through, but honestly, it's all his fault, and I feel he acted ignorantly. Recently, my boyfriend has been spending more time over at my place as we continue to date. It's been a lot of fun and I feel myself falling in love with him. We both love cooking and every night he stays over we cook a big delicious dinner together. The other night we were cooking at my place and I saw him grab a spice jar from my home country. This spice, in particular, is very strong and you can't buy it in the US. I only had it since it was a gift from my grandma the last time she visited. I use it in very small amounts in large batches of food. It's so strong, though it's delicious. Anyway, I saw my boyfriend about to use this specific spice to season the pot of food we were working on. I admit maybe I overreacted, but it was just a reflex since the entire meal would be ruined with too much of the spice added. I snatched my boyfriend's wrist and told him he wouldn't be able to handle this special spice. He gave me a dirty look and said he ate spicy food all the time. I giggled at him a little bit, since I knew he couldn't handle that level of spice in 1,000 years. I told him this spice in particular was too strong for him and I only used it sometimes in tiny amounts. He started to get annoyed. He crossed his arms and told me he could handle the same level of spice as I could, and that he wanted to use that spice in the meal. I asked him if he even knew the name of it, and he just grumbled and grabbed the spice jar again. This time, I didn't stop him. He's a grown man and I'm not here to mommy him. I watched as he added a hefty portion of the spice into the pot. It was a little more than I would have added, and I knew he wasn't going to be able to handle it, especially after never trying the spice before. We sat down to eat, and he looked so smug as he ate spoonful after spoonful. At one point he literally said, "See? Told you I'm fine," while continuing to smile. I just waited, expecting things would be going downhill soon enough, which they did. About 10 minutes into the meal, I noticed my boyfriend was sweating profusely. His skin was shiny and starting to get red. I asked him if he was okay, and I told him he didn't need to finish the food if it was too hot. He just shook his head and downed the rest of his food. Only 5 minutes later, he was bright red, and sweating bullets. He sat down on my couch and started grabbing at his throat, saying he couldn't breathe. I wasn't alarmed. As soon as I watched him down the plate of food I figured he would have a reaction like this. I just sighed and took him to the hospital. I still comforted him in the car even though I was annoyed. When we got back home, he was upset at me and insisted that I should have done more to protect him from the awful spice. During labor and childbirth, was there anything that took you completely by surprise? I had been in labor for around 16 hours with no food and water. Whatever I ate I threw up within a few minutes. When my daughter came out of me after a lot of struggles with pushing and cutting her cord that was wrapped around her, I heaved a sigh of relief when she was taken out and I was finally free of the pain. I laid there on the table for some time when I noticed there wasn't any movement around me. My daughter was crying her lungs out. I opened my eyes to see 3 nurses bent over my daughter. "Is everything all right?" I asked. "Wasn't a baby crying a good sign?" "Yes, you relax," said the nurse. I closed my eyes again. There was a whispering amongst the nurses again, so this time I asked a little tense. "Please tell me, is everything all right? Your baby came out all hungry." And all the nurses laughed. "This is the 2nd dose of milk that we are giving her. She wants more." "Never seen a just born this hungry," said the nurse closest to her, which had a syringe of milk in her hand and daughter was sucking it in with full force. "Well, that's an exact copy of my husband I have in there." I was all surprised. When they wrapped her up all contented and gave her to me, she gave me the grumpiest look ever. Now I know what that look was for. "You think it's easy being hungry, Mom? Couldn't you have gotten this over soon?" "It's been that day and today. She can go on without playing, watching TV or even sleep, but food is her soul. Can't do without it. Just like her father." No wonder she smiled at him the moment he picked her up for the first time. She recognized her partner in crime.
I can't explain to my husband why I won't have intercourse with him anymore. I, 28F, and my husband, 41M, have been together for 4 years, 2 of which we have been married. We have had the usual problems, mostly about finances or silly disagreements, but these are typically solved quickly. We both pride ourselves for being open in our feelings and communication, so our disagreements don't last long. We share a lot of the same interests, but also have our own friends and lives. I feel lucky to have found him. Until recently, I felt like we were soulmates. My husband watches adult films, as do I, but our tastes differ. We don't incorporate it into our intercourse lives by watching it together, and he watches a lot more than me. Sometimes he wants to try things he sees in adult films, which he has always talked to me about first, and has always said something like, "Hey, I saw this in an adult film," and then explained it. If it is something I think might be fun, I'm happy to comply. If it isn't, I refuse, and he lets it go. If we try it and I don't like it, we don't do it anymore. And our intercourse life has been nice. It isn't always mind-blowing intercourse, but honestly, we're past the honeymoon phase, and if we both have time for intercourse once a week, we are doing good. I've never before had a complaint in this part of our lives. I'm fairly sure he masturbates often, but I'm not the type to be upset about that. 2 weeks ago, we were having intercourse, having fun with it, and both enjoying ourselves. I don't want to be too graphic, but we were in a position where it is easy to zig instead of zag. In other words, he accidentally went from V to anal at full thrust. It hurt. A lot. I immediately pulled away. He apologized. It seemed like an honest mistake. That night, we ended up continuing in a different position after a little while, and all seemed forgiven. Things happen. Intercourse is messy. About a week ago, we were having intercourse, and he did the same exact thing, but this time, we were in a different position. More importantly, because he was on top with my thighs held in his hands, and I on my back, I couldn't pull away like the first time. I yelped and then told him to stop, but it took him a few seconds to hear me, or so I thought, and he ended up thrusting a few times. But I thumped his chest to get his attention. He apologized again. And then, he said something like, "We could have just kept going. You enjoy anal." That's true. I do. If able to prepare both physically and mentally. I do not want a surprise. And I cannot express how much it hurt because I wasn't expecting it. Well, intercourse was over for that night. I was pissed and I felt and still feel disrespected. After this second time, it didn't seem like an accident. I mean, if he had wanted anal, we could have talked about it if he had warned me beforehand, because like I said, I do enjoy it although not all the time, and I need to prepare/be in the mood. The next day he was sulky and distant, as if he were the wrong party in this situation, which only served to piss me off more. And I just had this sneaking suspicion about the situation. In my 11 years of being active, I have never had a partner accidentally do this before. I was off work that day after, while he went to work. When he left, I got onto our laptop with the full intention of checking his browser history to see what kind of adult films had been watching recently. As I said, he watches a lot of adult films, and I had this feeling he was watching some degrading or borderline abusive adult films, which I am neither into nor do I particularly want my husband to watch for tips on how to act in bed. I didn't realize this whole thing had a name. Wrong hole or surprise anal were his two most recent searches according to his history for the adult film site he uses. And he had watched at least 20 different videos of it. I clicked on one of the videos. I have no idea if it was typical for that particular genre/search term, but the male actor just goes for it and the female actress is nearly in tears. I mean, it could be a farce, right? She could be faking the pain, I don't know. But I wasn't when it happened to me. For days I have stewed on this without mentioning it to him, while he goes about his happy life thinking all is well. He got over his pouting, but how do I get over knowing my husband intentionally lived out his adult films fantasy on me, by surprising me with anal? How do I tell my husband I won't have intercourse with him because I no longer trust him not to hurt me? I met a demon named Jimmy C. At the bar, I met a man once who knew everything about me and said he'd jumped off the San Francisco Bridge many years ago. This has haunted me for a long time. I was about 19 at the time, and I was living in Savannah, GA. I drank a lot. I worked this terrible job as a grunt laborer, the kind where you go to those temp labor agencies like Able Body and Labor Finders. I'd show up at 4 a.m., work until 5 p.m., and drink myself to sleep after only taking home maybe $60 for the day. I was supposed to go into work this particular morning, but I decided to skip. I called a girlfriend and tell her I want to go to the beach. Tybee. I had already started drinking. She comes over, we hop in my big, ugly van, pack up some rods, and head to the beach. I decided to have a drink across from the beach at this little bar. This is where the story gets interesting. Shortly after ordering my drink, I get this really weird feeling. I became hyper aware of my surroundings. The door opens, and I see this guy walk in out of my peripheral vision. There was a seat between me and my girlfriend, but the bar was empty at like 9 a.m. and he could have sat anywhere else, yet he chooses to sit right between her and I. Then he starts doing this thing with his fingers. The bar top was reflective, and he takes his fingers like two little legs, and starts walking with them, skating with them on the top of the counter. This isn't something out of the ordinary, but I took notice because when I was in school, I did that all the time. I pretended I had rollerblades on my fingers and that I was skating around my desk. I hated school and was always distracting myself, so I became kind of mesmerizing for some reason. That's when he looks at me, and in this really think kind of Germanic or Nordic accent he says, "I notice you're a man who pays attention to detail." I'm also a man who pays attention to detail. Now, before I continue, I have to describe this guy. He had this short, spiky hair that was bleached at the tips, kind of like a late 90s style. He had really expensive clothes on, like a nice Prada leather jacket, nice designer jeans, really nice boots. He seemed like a kind of gay guy with awesome fashion sense and really distinctive taste. I always remember this, because I think to myself, some weird homeless crazy guy couldn't have afforded those clothes. Anyway, the other thing that stuck out was his eyes. They were piercing gray. It reminded me of like a husky's eyes, but his pupils just stayed this disturbing pinpoint size. They were just extremely small, which caused his look to be kind of terrifying. His teeth were normal, right? But not at the same time. I don't know how to explain it. They were sharper than they should be, as if they were filed slightly. His hands were normal, but his fingernails were slightly long and pointed, as if he deliberately did it. He kept licking his teeth, too, as if he were salivating. The thing about this guy is that, you look at him, and everything seems normal, but off at the same time, so you're questioning if you're crazy for thinking this. This guy then begins to start talking about the relationship between me and my girlfriend, but really strangely, he's talking about how beautiful she is and how I should pay more attention to her. Shortly after he began talking like this, I had this almost knowing feeling come over me. I knew this guy was not a human. I look at my girlfriend and say, "You need to leave." She just kind of looks at me like she knows too. Without a word of protest, she gets up quietly and leaves. Later I learned that she went next door to get a coffee. That's when this guy literally says to me with the utmost confidence, "You were supposed to go fishing today." He points at the beach across the street. "If you had, I would have drowned you in that ocean. And I shit you not," he fucking hissed. Again, for some reason this overwhelming calm had come over me. I just ask, "Who are you?" He answers back with this crazy gutter language, like act back, but it was really long. It sounded Arabic or Hebrew or something. I just, for some reason without skipping a beat, and I have no idea why I was so calm to this day, ask, "Say it in a way that I can understand." He says, "You can call me Jimmy C. I jumped off the San Francisco Bridge years ago, and we've been watching you." From there on out, he never referred to himself as me or I but only we. The conversation became something very strange after this. He was saying things like, "We see you taking a bath, we wish we too could feel the warmth of the water and the comfort of the steam," and other stuff. He kept buying me drinks, too, specifically whiskey sours. It was like he had an endless supply of money. He smoked Marlboro ultra-light cigarettes. After I don't know how long, because I lost sense of time kind of, I told him I'm going to leave. I walk next door, I get my girlfriend, and she's stone silent. We start driving home, don't say a word. Then I just ask, "Do you know what that was?" And she just says that was a demon. This girl had parents that were scientists, she was really analytical, completely non-religious, and that was the first thing she said out of her mouth. Now, I didn't say this part before, because this is the most important aspect of the story, so I'll say it now, because it's what happened after this that screwed me up for fucking years. The last thing this Jimmy C guy said to me before I left, is this: "Look at my car." I look outside, I see one of those newer Volkswagen Beetles. It was white. What does the license plate say? I look at the plate and it literally says, "Fierce." He looks me dead in the eyes and says, "The next time you see me, I'll be driving a black Mercedes and the license plate will say Utopia." Stupid, right? That night I was still calm. I don't know why, I felt like that guy on Office Space after his hypnotherapist died right in front of him and he was weirdly zen. But, my girlfriend started having terrible nightmares of this guy's head just staring at her in her dreams. Weeks went by, and that's when the encounter started affecting me. I found myself becoming paranoid about that black fucking Mercedes. Every black car I saw, I checked if it was a Mercedes. If it was, I immediately looked at the license plate. I started doing it when I watched TV or movies as well. I couldn't stop. Now, I'm going to fast forward a bit. About 10 years go by. I'm 29 and, in silence, when I'm alone, when I'm drinking, I often think about this encounter. I still look at black Mercedes every time they pass, but I'm not so much anxious about it anymore, as curious. And, I remember that my girlfriend at the time always kept a journal. By now I'm pretty sure that I'm insane. Maybe I was drunk, maybe I'm not remembering any of this correctly. After years of trying to find news articles of a Jimmy C. that committed self-mutilation on the San Francisco Bridge, looking at black cars, and so on, I feel like I'd grown out of it. Yet, still, I had to know. So, last year I tracked down my ex-girlfriend. We ended on bad terms. I find out she's a school teacher in Wisconsin, has married a woman, and is actually trying to have a child. I figure she's not going to talk to me, but I send her a Facebook message anyway. I ask her if she can find the journal from that day, because I have to know if her events line up with mine. Sure enough, she had it, and it contained even more detail than what I remembered because she had literally written it at the coffee shop next door right after it happened. I'll share her journal if everyone is interested. My kid came out as trans and I'm struggling, but not for the reasons you think. I've always known. Even as a baby he seemed happiest in his cousin's boy hand-me-downs and would protest if I dressed him in pink frilly things. The minute he learned to walk, it's been rough and tumble. Dirt under his nails, bugs in his pockets. I thought maybe he was going to be a tomboy like me. Until he was 5 and he tried to shave his head with his dad's beard trimmer. Huge bald spots everywhere in his beautiful long blonde hair. He looked at me with tears running down his chubby baby cheeks. "Mama, I don't want to be a girl." I got out the clippers and shaved his head. I knew at 7 if someone said he was a girl, he would ball up his fists and tell you he was a boy. I never once corrected him, but somebody did. I don't know who and I don't know when, but someone got in his sweet little head and for a moment he decided he was a girl. He tried for a while to be a girl, dining dresses with scraped knees, scuffed Mary Janes and grass stains. He tried to love ponies and Barbies and all things girl, but he hated it and you could tell he did. I knew at 10 he was diagnosed with anxiety and depression. My heart broke into a million pieces. I got him a therapist, and he started meds, and he started doing better for a while, but then that didn't seem to help either. One night when he was 11, he fell into my chest and sobbed that he didn't think he was a girl. I told him it was okay and he didn't have to be a girl. Talked about all the different genders, and I researched and answered all of his questions as best as I could. I got in touch with some non-binary and trans friends and asked for their help. He decided that he was non-binary, and for a while, he denounced gender altogether. But I knew. One night a few weeks ago at 13, he asked me to pass the butter during dinner, and immediately after, as if he was telling me something as mundane as the weather, he said it. "Mom, I'm a boy. I'm trans." The look on his face was part hope and part terror, but it was all brave. He's always been brave, even when he can't see it. I told him I loved him and that would never change, and that I would love him regardless, not in spite of. I always wanted a boy. I'm terrified. He wears his heart on his sleeve. He's so kind and gentle. He always has been. I'm trying so hard not to mess this up. It's too important, but I am scared, and part of my mama heart wants to squash it. Not because I don't believe him or I don't support him, but because I am afraid and I want to protect him. Afraid of how the world is going to treat him. Afraid of the current political climate we live in. Afraid of the things trans men experience at the hands of some evil cis men. Afraid of the cruelty cruelty he may face, afraid of the absolutely staggering self-destruction rate among trans people, and that I may one day bury my son because of it. I don't know what to do. I don't know where to go from here. Logically, I do, but mentally and emotionally, I'm just stuck. I don't really have anyone I can talk to about this. I just hope he knows that he is so loved and that that is enough. When I was younger, I may have permanently damaged the hearing of a much smaller child. I was an older kid, maybe 10 or somewhere around there. I was hanging out with the neighborhood kids as per usual. Well, there was this little one, probably around 6 or so, that followed us around. One day, we were running around shooting empty BB guns at each other. We would just cock it and pull the trigger. No BB came out, but it made a muffled sort of thumping sound. Something very notable about BB guns is the fact that if they aren't loaded, the mechanism allowing them to shoot is still in place, similar to an actual firearm. Hence, there is a burst of pressurized air that exits the nozzle rather than a BB anyway. At some point, I put the muzzle of one of the pistols in the 6-year-old ear and pulled the trigger at point-blank range. I will never forget the confused look on his face like, "Why did you do that?" He cried and ran home, but the rest of us just thought he was being a wuss because he was little, so we went on with our day. Well, even though the BB pistol wasn't loaded, that burst of air ruptured his eardrum to the point at which it started to bleed. His dad talked to my dad, and I lied about it, of course, scared to death. That kid never came back outside and we moved away a few months later. I am in my mid-30s and I still think of that kid. I wonder if his hearing is permanently damaged. I hate that I never apologized, I hate how I took no responsibility, and I hate how cowardly I was to lie to my dad about it. It fills me with so much shame. If you're out there, I hope you're doing alright and I'm sorry for being such a stupid kid. I'm deeply sorry for shooting that gun into your ear, and I pray you've recovered from the damage. What is the worst thing you have found on someone else's phone? My ex-wife's iTunes on her iPhone was actually my account that I set up for my iPad. She was just too lazy to set up a new account. So I told her if she did that her iMessages would come through to my iPad. She said she didn't care, until she started cheating on me and I got the text directly to my iPad. Hanging out with a work friend after work. We would have a couple beers at this restaurant and he would scroll Tinder and I would help him decide on which way to swipe. Until we saw my wife, now ex-wife. That was not a great time. I found out my wife is dying, after I read messages exchanged between her and her sister. I guess she was too afraid to tell me just yet. I waited till she wanted to tell me on her own before I told her that I had seen the messages and had already known. I'm a dental hygienist. A long-term patient of mine wanted to show me pictures of he and his fiancée's new puppy. Instead, he showed me 2 deck pics. I found "I love you" texts on my mom's phone to my boyfriend's dad. While my parents were my boyfriend won't talk to me and is suggesting we break up after I saw his burn scars. My boyfriend's house burned down when he was young after electrical issues never disclosed to his parents. He and his father were severely burned. They lived but his mother died. He and I met in freshman year and became best friends in sophomore year. I've never seen his scars in full good view, until now, only small glimpses if his shirt rode up and he'd quickly fix his shirt to cover it. He always hides his scars, constantly wearing jeans/pants and long sleeve shirts even if it's super hot outside. His scars start from the bottom half of his ribs to just above his knees, so this is the only way he can cover them, even bringing his pajamas into the bathroom to change into. He's done this ever since I've known him. Even after intimacy, which we do in the dark, which doesn't bother me because I know this is what makes him comfortable, he'll immediately get changed back into his clothes back on before we cuddle or do anything else. Once again, I'm fine with this, just trying to explain that I know how uncomfortable he is with his scars. I know he is ashamed of his scars, and when we were friends I was fiercely protective and always changed the subject if his scars got brought up, which he always thanked me for. I have never and would never ask or pressure him to show me. I don't judge his scars or think they're ugly. I thought he knew I wouldn't judge him because some of his dad's burn scars are impossible to cover up, one of them covering half his face, and never once have I judged or even thought his dad's scars were disturbing. He's a very handsome man, they both are, which is why I'm so confused by his reaction and accusations of this. I work weird hours, I'm a nurse, so sometimes I can come home at 9 a.m., sometimes 5 p.m., sometimes the butt crack of dawn. I went to immediately take a shower. I was in airplane mode and was completely exhausted. I opened the bathroom door and he was getting changed. I saw his scars. I'll admit, I stared not because I thought they were gross but because I was having an oh crap moment knowing I messed up. He and I have been dating for quite almost a year. I had to move into his place a while ago after my parents went no contact and cut me off after I came out and told them I was dating boyfriend. Long story short, toxic Bible thumping parents, so I'm not used to sharing an apartment with someone. He blew up at me, yelling at me to get out. Note, he has never yelled at me before this. Sure, we got in spats and small fights where he raised his voice, but he never full on yelled. I shut the door and he went quiet. I was pacing in the kitchen for almost 20 to 30 minutes when he quickly walked past me trying to leave when I stopped him. He was pissed. Yelling at me that he thought I would know how to knock by now and questioning if I did it on purpose. I was trying to explain while trying not to cry because I saw how red his eyes were. I knew he was crying. I couldn't say anything, just made incomprehensible sobs as I tried to explain that I was, but he wouldn't listen and left without saying where he was going. I'm heartbroken. He texted me an hour ago with a single message of "I'm not coming home, tomorrow we can talk about our relationship." I immediately messaged him back asking what that meant and spent several minutes watching that little text incoming bubble bob in and out before he texted whether we should stay together. As if it was obvious. I have no idea what to do. He's my boyfriend. My best friend of 8 years. What the hell do I do? I love him, I can't imagine life without him. His dad is like a father to me. I have nowhere else to go if he kicks me out. Above it all, I can't lose him. I'd rather have to go through coming out again than lose him. How do I make it up to him? How do I let him know that I'm sorry and never meant to make him uncomfortable? He was bullied for his scars. A huge bully of his from middle school always sniffed the air when he entered a class and said, really loudly, "Ew, you guys smell that? Smells like bacon's burning." He was a little chubby in middle school, every time he entered a room then laughed. Also, in small glances, a lot of our guy friends would say how cool it is. Looks like Deadpool's skin. They were trying to be nice but failed horribly, hence my fierce protectiveness over anyone bringing it up, and his family always emphasized it doesn't matter what he looked like on the outside because he was beautiful on the inside. Seriously, what the hell? He's also mentioned having a really bad ex-girlfriend who had issues with his scars in the past but never went too deep into it, and I'm starting to wonder if that's what his overreaction and suggestion of a breakup was rooted in. I'm taking mental notes on all the comments on what's the best way to approach this, and they're really helping, thank you. People who found a side hustle that makes you more than your job, what was it? I worked as an intimacy worker during my early adulthood to make ends meet. My dad left and my mom neglected me and did awful things to me, which led to me cutting contact with her when I turned 18. I worked at McDonald's for a bit, slanging cheeseburgers for a check, but then switched to adult entertainment. I was a very good-looking guy as well as tall, and women who were 30 or 40 plus would pay me. However, it didn't bring in a whole lot. My side hustle actually originated from an interest in, well, money. I didn't want to go down a dumb and stupid route of slanging on the corner and trapping, so I looked for legal ways to make money. I tried the classics, affiliate marketing and drop shipping on the side. Needless to say, the light-up Crocs I was advertising on Omegle to dropship did not bring me in a lot of money. During my time as an adult worker, disaster struck. Due to using my PP so much, one night as me and a refined 46-year-old lady were getting down and dirty, my PP bent and broke. The pain. I can't even describe it. What followed were the worst few months of my life. Not just due to the fact that I was a man walking around with a broken PP, but also the fact that my income was now robbed from me. Luckily, my best friend offered to loan me the money needed for hospital expenses and even let me stay at his place to get back on my feet. During this time I went on a real journey as to how to earn money. I realized that the big bucks were in financing. I tried the classic ways to trade and learn about financing, but the complicated information made my head spin. Who knew that having your mother rope you as a child and missing school and barely graduating made you not the sharpest tool in the shed? I was about to give up on the financing and move on to the next hustle. Next thing I knew, I discovered an app. Ooh, look, another dumb app about finances. The last 20 didn't work, but this one will. I thought to myself sarcastically. Well, turns out, this app was different. It was called Bloom and caught my attention a little. It didn't just make me trade stock and hope for the best like all others. It taught me about finances and about investing. Or at least tried its best. My stupidity was hard to deal with for the app sometimes, I imagine. Thankfully, this app rewarded me for learning and I diligently put time into it. Don't get it twisted, it didn't turn me into a millionaire overnight, but it taught me way more about financing than all other apps combined. I started to trade small time using my best friend's money. He was kind enough to lend me more. Over the months I kept learning and actually started earning some profit. Turns out this financing thing is easy, even someone as dumb as me can do it. When my PP healed, I had the choice to go back into adult entertainment, and I entertained the thought and had one customer come over to see if I still somewhat enjoyed it. Well, I didn't. Maybe it had something to do with the fact that this woman smelled so bad that I actually threw up after giving her neck, but hey, I realized it wasn't for me. I told my best friend I'll stick to financing. By this point I've been using the app for a good while and am confident to say I know the fundamentals of trading and my results are showing. I even put my best friend on. I've even been able to start repaying him for the hospital bill loans, granted not a lot, but it's a start, and my progress so far seems very promising.
What was your I don't get paid enough for this moment at work? Psycho camp director lost her shit on all of the lifeguards because we said we weren't coming back next summer. Reality was we all had legit reasons. I was going to take summer courses to graduate early, another guard was moving to university and was going to work in that city, another guard got offered a head guard spot at a camp near her house, etc. Nothing that said we hated the current camp, just other things going on. We were told in a group meeting if we weren't happy there we could leave and she would find other guards. Following Friday she calls us all in to tell us what a great job we are doing and how happy everyone is going to the lake. Tuesday after that she calls us in individually to tell us we aren't working hard enough and she sees us slacking off all the time. Lunchtime Tuesday all the guards walked into her office, told her to go F herself in front of the owner of the camp, and we all piled into my Ford Focus and went for a beer. Went home that night to message from camp owner asking us to give him a call back. We all chatted and realized he had called all of us. Called him the following day, told him what went down. He asked us to reconsider and that he would give us a $5 an hour raise and report directly to him. We discussed it and agreed on the condition that Psycho director apologized to us at a collective staff meeting. She refused and had a tantrum. Camp owner fired her on the spot, escorted her off the property and we opened the lake back up. F you Barb.
My sister forced her creep husband on me and my mother chose her side. My mother tried to trick me, 26, into joining my sister, 31, for dinner after she tested me around her husband, 31. My sister recently got married. It's been about 3 to 4 months. I didn't really see much of them after the wedding, honeymoon and then back to work. But once a month our family all gets together and my parents host a huge feast. Since this took place a week ago, it was for the month of August. During this dinner, my brother-in-law was being extremely weird towards me. He was complimenting my body, ignoring my sister and just straight up acting so strange. It was completely unexpected for several reasons, one being his wife was sitting right next to me. Two, he has only been married a few months. Also, he's just never spoken to Slash about me like that before. I felt really uncomfortable and I'm sure it transpired to the rest of the room because what the F. Except it was weird because nobody was pointing anything out. I was extremely confused and just wanted to leave. I left early but when I got home I just felt so icky. I don't even know how to describe it. I decided to message my sister and let her know his behavior made me uncomfortable. I told her that it was also concerning that he felt comfortable enough to say these things in front of my parents and brother. I explained that if she didn't feel comfortable being in the middle I wouldn't mind explaining this to him myself. His behavior was so unnerving that I FaceTimed my boyfriend who was away for work in the US. I told him it was weird and how suddenly my brother-in-law's behavior towards me went from that of siblings to this horribly uncomfortable situation. He was pissed, rightfully so. My sister didn't respond to my text until the next day. She asked to meet up so I did. I was expecting her to be upset and to have him apologize for what he said. Instead, she admits it was all a test and I passed. I was confused to say the least. What did she mean by a test? Passed? Like what's going on? Turns out, she had her husband do those things on purpose because she wanted to see how I would react if he had said those things to me and meant them. My reaction and choice to message her afterwards told her I could be trusted around him. I was offended to say the least. Why would she think I couldn't be trusted? Well, let me tell you in my opinion, not very valid reason for this lack of trust. My sister has been married before. She was 27 and the divorce was about 10 months into marriage. Her ex was a psycho to say the least. He had known me longer than he did my sister, I was the one who had introduced them. They got along well and eventually started dating. It looked like the healthiest and most romantic relationship to grace planet Earth. Except when they got married. During their marriage, I was staying with them because it was a closer commute to work. They had extra bedrooms and I would pay rent and cook and clean for myself. My underwear, bras and panties, would often go missing. It started off small. I just assumed it got mixed up in my sister's laundry and would turn up eventually. But it was happening more frequently to the point I was buying underwear almost weekly. I kept pressuring my sister to admit she was stealing my underwear and she was adamant it wasn't her. I decided to just ignore it and go about my day. Something I hadn't even considered an option was the real reason. My former brother-in-law was stealing my underwear. I don't know, nor did I want to know what he was doing with it when I found out. But I was so disgusted and confused. Someone I thought was my friend, was actually just a creep. He admitted he had never really loved my sister and was just using her to get to me. I was just so creeped out and I pressed charges against him for his sickening behavior. I was able to get a restraining order and my sister divorced him almost instantly after finding out. She used something traumatic that happened to me and flipped it to make it seem like I'm the one who was untrustworthy. She claimed I must have strung him along for him to think like that and this test was just to prove I wasn't doing it again. Safe to say I was extremely hurt and angry by her response, so I told her to never speak or contact me again if that's what she really thought of me. My family found out and for the most part agreed her behavior is crazy. But my mother stood by her actions and said my sister was just trying to protect herself from being hurt again. I told her if she had just been honest with me from the start, I wouldn't have been as bothered. There's a right way to approach things and a wrong way. This isn't just wrong, it's also crazy. Why is she so adamant it's my life goal to hurt her? I didn't know that her ex was going to turn out like that, so why am I being punished? She claimed I should have had some indication he liked me, but he really made it seem like he was head over heels for my sister. How am I supposed to know what's going on in someone else's mind? Anyway, the family dinner was earlier for this month as it was the most compatible date for everyone's schedules yesterday. I told my parents to expect me not to show up if my sister and brother-in-law were going. It wasn't even because I refused to ever speak to her again. I had just said that because the situation was so fresh. I told my mother I would apologize when I had cooled down a little. It was just difficult to face them when they made me feel like a horrible person for a situation that was out of my control. My mother assured me my sister wouldn't attend, so I agreed to come. When I arrived they were both there. It felt like an ambush and it sort of was. My sister demanded I apologize for my reaction because it was my own fault it happened in the first place. I can't lie, I snapped. I told her she should remove my number and the title of being my sister if she really felt that way. My wife abandoned our infant daughters because she thought there was about to be a home invasion. She's refusing to acknowledge her mistake. My wife is a stay-at-home mom. Last week when I was at work, and my two oldest were at school, my wife was sitting at the dining room table when she saw a man walking down the driveway and going to the front door. He had what she thought was a hammer. She went to the front door and the guy was trying to get in. The guy saw her and waved, and tried to get in. She fled the house and ran out the back door. She left her cell phone and Apple Watch. She also left our twin girls, 8 months old. They were sleeping in their cribs. She ran through the neighborhood looking for someone to help her call the police. Eventually she found someone and they called the police. The police responded and cleared the house. Turns out, it was a repair guy who was supposed to go to our neighbor's house and had been told that no one would be home and to just come in. She is mad at me for not being more supportive of her. I was stunned when she told me and was surprised when she said she left the girls. She is always yelling at me about how I don't do enough for the kids, unlike her who sacrifices constantly. I don't think that is accurate, but it is beside the point. We have been having major issues in our marriage for a long time apart from this. She is acting like this is one of the most traumatic events of her life. Which is making me madder and madder. I am having a real hard time putting this one behind me. If this guy had been a bad guy she would have abandoned our girls to him all so she could save herself. Our house isn't that big, and people in the neighborhood and online know we have 2 little girls. A big issue I am having is the double standard that if I had done this she would have never forgiven me and probably divorced me. We had a fight because when we moved to a new house my side of the bed was on the far side from the door and that I needed to be able to stop an attacker. I have been yelled at for abandoning my daughters when I take a shower in the morning before work and they begin crying, or if she is sleeping in and one begins crying while I'm changing the other's diaper and it takes me a minute to finish. I totally understand this is fight or flight and I'm not trying to Monday morning quarterback. I have not critiqued let alone criticized her. The closest was when I was surprised when she told me she left the girls. Other than that call or when I came home and she was annoyed that we don't have security cameras, we haven't really talked about it. My wife abandoned our infant daughters because she thought there was about to be a home invasion. She's refusing to acknowledge her mistake. Since that incident we have had numerous more issues. We have had more days with screaming matches than here is a list of issues since. She woke up early on Saturday, but didn't wake me or my son up for his early practice. She didn't do anything to help us get ready. Her only question when we came back was how late we were. The moment I came home, she went back to bed. I had all 4 kids by myself, which is fine. I took the kids to the store to run errands. As soon as I came back in, she got in the shower and left, and refused to take any kids despite their cries. She refused to tell us where she was going. Sunday, she refused to go to anyone's hockey practice because she had to clean the house. While I'm going to park at the rink, with my kids crying, she calls me because she had hired a person to clean out our garage, and wanted to know where we were going to move things. This was the first time I had heard of this. We had a thermonuclear fight on Monday. My eldest, who is medically obese, was screaming at me to get a second helping of dinner ready. I tried bluffing to send him to bed without the second helping. He goes straight to her, and she overrules me. Once they left the room, I explained what I was doing, and she spiked her laptop on the bed, jumped up and started screaming at me. Proceeds to follow me out of the room and is screaming in front of all 4 kids that I am a whiny bitch and not a real man and that I am trying to starve her kids. Funnily enough, this was just before our marriage counseling session. I kept it, and while I was in the waiting room she continued screaming at me and attacking my character. When the session started she refused to join. She was puttering around and started blending something. I tried to be as objective as possible, and the counselor said that she was impressed with that. In the last 5 minutes I tried to just bring my laptop to her. When I did she collapsed into the room she was in like Superman seeing kryptonite. She refused to do it. After that, I went to bed, and she woke me up and wanted me to set up our printer. The lack of anger caught me off guard, and so I did it. She stood over my shoulder the whole time, silently, and refused to let me see anything. We had a couple of other fights along the same lane. But yesterday, Thanksgiving, we had a decent day. Not that it was overly affectionate. We just didn't fight. She slept in until 1 p.m. in the afternoon, and was snippy because I didn't have everyone ready yet. She wanted the girls in the car seats. She then began a 90-minute shower and makeup routine, and helped with the kids for maybe 20 minutes. We ended up an hour late for Thanksgiving dinner. But for us, that was a good day. Yeah, there was no affection or anything, and we didn't speak in the car, but yeah, my mind forgot all the issues we had been having, and I wanted to make it work. That night, I woke up and attended to one of the girls who is very sick. That is the one thing that she has done exclusively, is attend to the kids when they wake up. She has taken kids from me when I do get up before her. One fight we had in September she screamed at me as being selfish for taking my daughter and sitting with her. I had said that I didn't mind and that I was up anyway. And that became somehow me keeping her up because I couldn't sleep. The problem is that this has become a trump card in every argument. But, anyway, I was with my daughter from 4 o'clock to 5 o'clock, and she slept in. This morning, I woke up at 9 o'clock, the latest I have slept in that I can remember. I started making the kids breakfast and finishing the laundry. She was working on her laptop already. She snapped that I shouldn't bother cleaning the house because she has hired someone. I tried very hard, and refused to escalate, but told her that we can't really afford a cleaning lady, and that I've got it. She proceeded to call me a little bitch and scream at me in my face in front of my kids. One of my boys ran and hid, and the other sat and read on the couch, but he was not happy. She blamed me for not having time to clean and not having money and that I couldn't clean or do laundry to her standards and that she wasn't a cleaner. It was about an hour of just constant abuse. So I spent today cleaning the house, doing laundry and taking care of all 4 kids. My sons did more cleaning than she has for a month. What has really disturbed me is not the abuse towards me. I have normalized that and I am used to it. And honestly, if she kept it behind closed doors, I was prepared to wait out the next 17 years and leave once my kids were out of the house. But my eldest son is clearly mirroring her behaviors and internalizing the stress. It doesn't help that she constantly wants me to ask him who is his favorite, who yells more, and who is the better parent. When I refuse to do that, I am scared of what he might say. My stepdad got in a fight to protect me and I feel different about him now. So my mom married my stepdad when I was 14 and we've always gotten along. My dad died when I was 11 and to be honest I'm still working through the relationship we had. I've always had this fantasy that he was an amazing dad but if I'm honest he taught me things the hard way. He made me scuffle with a 13-year-old when I was 10. When I said I was scared he told me I was being a wuss. When I didn't win he was disappointed in me. When my mom married my stepdad as we kept to ourselves at first but he's honestly twice the man my dad was. It's hard to say that but it's true. The one thing he said to me before he married my mom was that he'd never hurt us and always protect us. It's been 5 years and he's kept his promise. He's always been amazing to my mom and me and I admit that he spoils me sometimes. He'll take care of my chores for me and gets me whatever I want even if I don't ask him for it. If he hears me talking about something he'll just get it for me. He always asks if I have enough money and if I don't he'll transfer money into my checking account. We don't really talk about personal stuff, but he's always said I can talk to him about anything whenever I feel like it. Today we were at the store and some older guy accused me of giving him a dirty look while we were in the parking lot. I didn't know what he was talking about and told him I didn't even look at him, but he took me to the ground. My stepdad jumped in so fast that I didn't even see what happened. I heard him bop the guy, and when I got up the angry man was on the ground looking scared and holding his nose. My stepdad was shouting at him in a scary voice, "You don't ever put your hands on him." He helped me up and the guy got back in his car and sped away. After that he didn't want me to leave his sights in the store. The whole way home he kept apologizing that he didn't step in earlier and telling me he never wanted me to see him fight. I've never even seen him get mad or raise his voice. It was scary, but it also made me feel so weird. I can't explain it, but it feels like I finally know how much he loves me. We never say it to each other, but I always knew how he felt. When we got home I told him I love him for the first time and he gave me the hardest hug I've ever had and I almost started crying. My kids threatened to call CPS on me, so I put their dog up for adoption. My two twin sons were 6 years old when their mother passed away in a car accident. It was a devastating affair, and I didn't even look at another woman for the longest time, but now, 10 years later, with my children being teenagers who are old enough to understand and choose to accept a new female figure in the home, I've decided to start dating again. I've been seeing this girl Claire for only 2 months now, but my sons are furious that I would dare date any woman after their mother. As a result, they've lately been going through a rebellious phase, which includes them skipping homework, stopping all their chores, and coming home late at night, way past their curfew. For reference, their chores used to include walking and feeding the dog, but they've even stopped that, putting the responsibility of caring for our little guy fully on me when I work 11 hours a day. Still, like any parent, I've tried my best to speak to them gently about the issue to see how we as a family can work past this. However, my sons have refused to entertain any of my attempts at having a genuine conversation. The last straw came a few nights ago, when I asked them to help me with cooking dinner for my girlfriend and they intentionally sabotaged the meal by dumping vinegar in the sauce. Furious, I told my sons this rebellion would not be tolerated if they kept it up. My kids started walking to the door, and I explicitly told them that they were not allowed to leave this house until we had a proper discussion, when my eldest turned back and said, "Yeah, and what are you going to do about it, Dad? If you try to stop us, we'll just call CPS on you and say you've been abusing us. Is that what you want?" Go to part 2.
My drug addict employee wrecked my business while I was away, so I'm getting her jumped. No matter how much you think you can trust someone, people will always put themselves first, and I learned that the hard way. While I was on vacation, my drug-addicted employee drove her car through the front window of my business because she was high. The employee's name is Kara, and I had actually known her for years, so I kept giving her chances even though her drug problem was only getting worse. I would give anything to be able to go back in time and fire her as soon as she started doing hard drugs in the first place. Like I said, I had known her for years. She was one of my childhood best friends and had a really hard home life. She spent a lot of time at my house when we were growing up, so when she started with the drugs it was hard for me to see what she was becoming. I just kept seeing her as that lonely little girl, and even as an adult I felt this need to protect her. So I kept her employed at my hair salon so she had some sort of money to take care of herself. Her substance abuse started getting worse about 2 months ago. She was coming into work without even brushing her hair, and she had even fallen asleep while washing a customer's hair more than once. I was really reaching the end of my rope with her. I was stressed about her and a few other things to do with my business, so I decided to take a short weekend vacation. I was relaxing on the beach when my phone started blowing up with calls from my other employees. I started freaking out when I started receiving pictures of a car that had plowed through the front of my business, destroying everything inside. That salon was my entire life, and I had opened it almost 9 years ago. To see all my hard work just totally obliterated like that broke my soul. I found out the full story when I finally got home. Kara had been getting high in her car after work, and she got disoriented and somehow drove her car right into my store. She had no injuries by some miracle. Her family even bailed her out of jail after she was arrested that night. I know I need to sue her, but that doesn't feel like enough since she's basically ruined my life. So I talked to my cousin who used to be in a gang. I told him how I needed this woman to be hurt badly, and that I would pay anything to make sure she was taught a lesson. My cousin put me in touch with these really shady guys, and I paid them a couple $1,000s to attack Kara and break all her limbs. I gave them the money a couple of weeks ago. I don't know if and when they're going to go through with it, but I just hope they crack every limb slowly.
An entitled student tried to use her body to boost her grade. My boss told her to get lost and now she's screwed. When I was teaching freshman science labs in grad school, a girl offered me intimacy in exchange for a passing grade. The department had a strict but very reasonable attendance policy. Basically, if you didn't show up to at least half the lab meetings, you will automatically fail the lab course. One semester, I had a student who felt so entitled and thought that she could pass the course without going to the class. This girl didn't have her poop together and skipped more than half the meetings without an excuse. She would now need to make up 2 labs to receive a passing but embarrassingly low grade. But we weren't supposed to allow makeup classes without a doctor's note or similar. Because of this, it'll be hard to give her a makeup class because again, she skips classes with no reason at all. At the end of the semester, the student was acting pretty sketchy. She asked to meet me but refused any of the times I proposed when it was obvious that someone else would be around, like during office hours or other labs I was teaching. She kept asking for a meeting to discuss her grade. One of the makeups she needed was for the same lab as I would teach the next day. So, I was going to offer for her to come to the last lab section and make up one of the dry labs on her own time. That would pull her up to a pass. So finally, I proposed a meeting 15 minutes after my second to last lab section. I also asked my boss and another female TA to be there. Well, long story short, she came to the meeting we arranged. I had implied that no one else would be there, but made sure my boss and the TA were there. I explained that she needed to make up 2 labs. She asked, "But isn't there anything I can do?" And kinda gave me that look. Note that this was with the other 2 people standing right next to me, so it was super awkward. I responded that she could come to the next day's lab. Her response was priceless. She couldn't make it to the lab because of a conflict with some sorority event and repeated the question about anything she could do. Well, too effing bad, I guess. If you're going to prioritize having fun over passing your class, why should I go out of my way to help you pass? So I didn't tell her she could make up the pencil and paper lab and just said there was nothing I could do. She asked if there was anything at all she could do to boost her grade. It was her 3rd time using this line. My boss couldn't take it, so he spoke up and told her to get lost. But here's the best part: as soon as she left, she emailed my boss and asked to meet him to discuss her grade. He explained that there was nothing to discuss and that she was screwed.
I think my mother is lying about who my father is again. I have a very complicated and messy relationship with my mother. Growing up, I believed my father was a military man from America named Alex. We had visited him when I was a toddler and had planned to move to the US to live with him. Then, according to my mother, she and him had a fight and he refused to speak to me or her again. I went on to believe that he had abandoned me and that my mother had done everything she could to get us into contact again. She spent the next 14 years saying how he had refused to sign my birth certificate, that he had been emailed our location and how to contact us every time we moved, and that she didn't understand why he didn't want me anymore. She had also told me he had no social media and that she had tried looking but found nothing. As the title suggests, she had lied about everything. When I was around 15 or 16, I had decided to look for him myself, as I had always felt something was off and wanted to know what happened. It took less than 5 minutes to find him on Facebook. I was shocked, and when I saw him with his children at Disney World, I was devastated. Alex looked so normal and happy, and I couldn't wrap my head around why he could be so seemingly good to his other children and not me. So I decided I wasn't going to message him before trying one more time to hear it from my mother. I thought that maybe she was just lying to protect me, and that maybe she was trying not to hurt me, and Alex was not the man I thought he was. After having a very intense yelling match, she finally tells me the truth: Alex isn't my father. She then goes on to explain that I was conceived on a one-night stand, and that she didn't know anything but his first name. I was then sat down by her and her best friend and basically told to get over it, as she was just trying to protect me and give me a nicer version of my father. I was also told not to tell my aunt, as my mother was embarrassed. For the next few years I wasn't allowed to talk about it. If I did, my mother would become defensive and we would fight until I decided to drop it. I felt so alone and isolated. I was also made to feel guilty about how I found out and that I had ruined her plan of sitting me down and explaining it all to me. It took a toll on my mental health tremendously, and as much as I wanted to believe her, I just couldn't. But I also had nowhere else to live and knew that it was just better to keep the peace and try to drop it. I tried, I really did. But then I downloaded TikTok and found out about home DNA tests. Last year I had seen a TikTok of a girl from my country finding her brother from doing a DNA test, and I decided to do one. But due to life getting in the way, I was only able to do it this year. To my surprise, my mother was very encouraging and had even offered to pay for it as my birthday present. I couldn't believe it. It was like a switch had been flipped, and then suddenly I am able to talk about it and ask questions. She told me everything, though little, she knew about him, and seemed to be excited about me finding him. I took her up on her offer and 2 weeks later spat into a tube and sent it off. I then spent 2 months daily checking for updates, looking up other people's stories and imagining how we would officially meet. It's unrealistic, I know, but I honestly wanted to believe that all the emotional damage would be fixed just by meeting him, and that I would be able to move on with my life as an adult with 2 parents. It was a euphoric feeling seeing that little tracker move up little by little each week until finally the matches were in. All my matches were of second cousins, and all their information was private, so I couldn't do anything besides message them and pray that they respond. Luckily, the people I have spoken to thus far have been very friendly but also very confused. None of them have any idea what I'm talking about and have no link to a man named Max. I want to assume that it's just because it's a big family, or maybe he had lied about his name to her, but considering how my mother is acting now, I'm not sure. It's like we're back to square one. She has gone from being very open and compassionate to defensive and annoyed. Every time I tell her one of my cousins have messaged me back, she starts to get nervous and snippy. She's also changing her story in small ways that feel suspicious. For example, when asked about his name, she used to be very adamant that it was Max and that she knew he wasn't lying, as his friend was dating hers and that they also called him Max. Now she says that she isn't sure and that no one else called him Max near her and that it's possible he lied. She also keeps changing from I could pick him out of a lineup if I saw him to no, I don't remember what he looks like. It happened so long ago I honestly don't know how to feel. I want to believe her but I just can't. There's something wrong and I know she's keeping something from me. I think she believed that maybe I wouldn't connect with anyone, but I don't know. I honestly don't know how I would be able to forgive her and know that it would destroy what's left of our relationship if she's lying. I love her, but cannot understand how she believed making me believe my father had chosen to abandon me was a better reality than the truth. Coming soon. I think my mother is lying about who my father is again. I now know who my father is, and no, my mother was not the one lying. My conception was consensual. Finding my dad was not worth potentially hurting my mother if it hadn't been. However, after a few days of not talking about it, my mother was the one to mention it and asked me if I was able to find any other matches. She seemed to be in a better mood and was more open. She confided in me about her feelings, and I did the same. We talked and I felt comfortable to continue my search. While the truth was not at all what I think either of us wanted, I am happy to report that our relationship is in a good space and that we both have been able to peacefully resolve this issue. The past couple of days have been an emotional whirlwind, and so breaking this all down is a little hard, but I will try my best. Coincidentally, right around the time I first did the original test, I had managed to get a job after looking for a good 3 years. So, the idea of paying another $200 on a test was out of the question for me. I just wanted to buckle down and pay off my debt and save. However, a few people informed me that I could download my DNA data and upload it for free on MyHeritage instead of having to buy their test and doing the whole process again. So, I did. As I mentioned before, I had just started working again, and so I just tried to forget about it. I also just believed that at most, it would just give me another third cousin who also did not know what I was talking about. I now believe I was just trying to distance myself from the situation as much as I could emotionally so that when I was given nothing, I wouldn't be as disappointed as I was the first time. After a few days, I checked my email and was told that my results were ready. It was pretty late at night, but I thought F it, and checked them out. At first it seemed to be pretty much the same, saw a few familiar names, and my ethnicity was pretty much the exact same too. However, there was a new highest match. A nephew named Jake with a 22.2% DNA match. I really cannot express the feeling that flowed through me when I saw that match, but it honestly sent chills down my spine when I saw his picture. I was already in tears before I had even clicked on his profile. I went onto his profile and was confused on how he could have been my nephew but was a good 10 years older than me. It just didn't make sense, and his family tree was private. Luckily, he used the same profile picture on both MyHeritage and Facebook, so I messaged both. I explained my situation and also clarified that he did not have to message back if he was uncomfortable. I have always tried to be conscious of the other people I was involving into this, and that I wasn't trying to gain anything other than the truth. I say this because I believe that despite my intentions, I will always feel guilty about messaging Jake, and that I know that I have hurt him. Anyway, a good hour or two later Jake replied. He was very sweet and explained that his father had actually been adopted and that I most likely came from his side because of this. He also revealed to me that, coincidentally, his father's name was also Max. We went back and forth a bit, asking each other questions when the tone suddenly seemed to shift after I mentioned Max's friend that was dating my mother's friend. Our messages turned from haha, what a weird coincidence to holy poop, it's my effing dad. Our conversation ended pretty quickly after that, with him telling me that his dad had actually passed away a few years ago and that there was pretty much nothing else to say. I was also still a bit put off about the whole nephew thing, but found out that it may have been because I didn't put my birth date or gender into my profile. So after doing that, I checked again and the match had updated from nephew to half-brother, which just confirmed what we already knew to be true. After our conversation I did a bit of looking around his Facebook and found out that I actually had a couple of siblings. My sister looks exactly like me, to the point that it scared me, and that I am the youngest. I also found out that both Max and his friend were in fact married at the time I was conceived, which means they were both actively cheating together on their wives with other women. Because of this, I have no doubt that this was not the first time they cheated, and that it was just the first time he had been caught to a degree. So yeah, my biological dad is a cheating a-hole and I am disgusted. He has not only hurt his wife and children, but has also involved my mother and me into his deceit. Had I had known the way this would have turned out, I would have never taken a test. I will always feel guilty for hurting his family, and even though I know it isn't my fault, and that I wasn't the one cheating, I still am responsible for hurting them and their memory of their father. So overall I now know the truth.
What is the first thing you always do when you come home? When I come home, the first thing I always do is jump onto my rusty old sofa, kick off my shoes and let out a deep sigh of relief. It's been a long day, and the thought of finally being able to relax after hours of hard work is pure bliss. However, there are times when I come home and the first thing I do is head straight for my liquor cabinet. Don't judge me, we all have our vices. Sometimes, a cold beer or a shot of whiskey is the only thing that can help me unwind. It's like my own personal escape, my way of forgetting about all the bullshit that life throws my way. But there was one day that stood out above the others, a day that I will never forget. It was a day like any other. I came home, kicked off my shoes and went straight to the liquor cabinet. However, as I reached for the bottle of whiskey, I realized that it was empty. Panic set in. What the F was I going to do now? I needed that escape, that release from the stress of everyday life. I searched high and low for another bottle, but to no avail. That's when I remembered hearing about a shady character who sold illegal liquor. Without thinking twice, I grabbed my car keys and headed out on a mission to find this guy. After driving around for what felt like hours, I finally stumbled upon a sketchy-looking house with an even sketchier-looking man sitting outside. I rolled down my window, my heart racing with nervousness. I asked if he had any whiskey, and after a brief exchange, he handed me a bottle. Feeling relieved, I headed back home, eager to try my new find. But as I took a sip, something felt off. It tasted weird, almost like rubbing alcohol. And before I knew it, I was on the ground, writhing in pain. The next thing I knew, I woke up in a hospital bed, my stomach pumped and a team of doctors standing over me. The illegal liquor had been laced with something deadly, and I was lucky to be alive. But the doctors had more questions than answers. How had I come across this dangerous concoction? Who was this mysterious seller? And most importantly, why had he done this? I've been unable to answer any of these questions, and the mystery remains unsolved. But it's a constant reminder to always be cautious in the pursuit of escaping the hardships of life. I'll never forget that day, and it's a reminder that sometimes, it's best to stick to the familiar and not take unnecessary risks. Hotel staff, who's the worst guest you've ever encountered? Yesterday, our hotel was sold out. A big corporate event took all but 10 rooms, and those 10 got reserved. Unfortunately, most of them were reserved by construction workers. For the most part, there are emotional Karens who freak the hell out about everything and like to flap their proverbial PPs at me. And then there's Gary, who is special, in that he's more of a jerk than all the others. Gary approached me at the desk. Checking in. Just need to see your ID. No you don't. I'll let that hang there for a moment. Then, yeah, I do. No, you don't. I've been staying here for months. You don't need to see my ID. Yes, I do. No you don't. Nobody else checks it. They're doing their jobs wrong. ID, please. I'm not showing you my ID. I'm not giving you the keys to your room otherwise. So you're gonna deny me service just because I wouldn't show you my freaking ID? Yes. Gary huffed and puffed and tried to blow the house down, but I'm immune to the rages of middle-aged impotence. Nobody else ever IDs me. Sir, if Jesus Christ walked through that door and showed me the stigmata, I'd still ask for a government-issued photo ID. And I'd love to see yours. Now, Gary relented and pulled out his wallet. Yep, it's Gary. So I pulled up his reservation. Okay, now I just need you to swipe or insert your card here. No you don't and no I won't. Nobody ever makes me do this. Then they're doing their jobs wrong, and I'm doing mine right. No, you're not. You're just making stuff up to feel like a big man. I don't need to feel like a big man. I need you to swipe or insert your card. Why? If you dispute the charge, we have physical authorization showing that you authorize the payment. It helps us out with scammers. So I'm a scammer? No. Swipe or insert your card here please. I'm not going to. Because nobody else ever makes me do this. And I don't care about helping you guys out. While I'm making you do it. No you aren't. I'm not. Gonna. Then you don't get into your room. Aren't you supposed to satisfy customers? I'm not satisfied. Call your manager. I won't be doing that. I'm not giving you my card. Then I'm not giving you your room. Have a good night. I turn to walk away, lo and behold. The card appears in his hand. He inserts the chip. Payment goes through. I get him his keys and hand them to him with a smile. Have a good night. You're a real jerk, you know that? He says, if you decide to become verbally abusive with me or any other employees I will have the police remove you. Only warning. Have a good night. I lifted the receiver on the phone and stared at him. Gary rolled his eyes and stalked off, muttering darkly. Coincidentally, his boss came through the lobby not 10 minutes later, and he was not happy to hear what I had to say about old Gary. I got into work today and as my supervisor is leaving, he says, oh. Either way, we don't take the construction company rate anymore and their employees are all banned from property. Why? Because Gary got into 3 fights with 3 separate employees yesterday, tried to rope a girl in the hallways and destroyed his room. The management decided to end their contract for the discount and kicked them all out. My husband embarrassed me at my own wedding. My husband and I have been together for 3 years, and he's usually not selfish, just occasionally immature. But the problem started when he got obsessed with those cake-smashing videos that were all over the internet. He thought they were hilarious, but I never found them funny. He'd always show me those videos where husbands ruin their wives' special day by smashing cake in their faces just for laughs. He knew I didn't like it, and he also knew about my history with cake smashing. My family does it, and when I was 17, I begged my mom not to do it on my birthday. She promised she wouldn't, but during the cake cutting, she pushed my head into the cake, and one of the decorations cut my forehead. It wasn't a major injury, but it ruined my birthday, and I was really upset. So, I told my husband that if he ever did something like that to me, I'd leave him. But he laughed it off, thinking I was kidding. Fast forward to our wedding day. Everything was perfect, and I felt like a princess in my expensive dress with my hair and makeup all done up. We got to the cake cutting part, and when I turned to him, he scooped up a huge chunk of our wedding cake and smashed it all over my face. It felt like everything went in slow motion. He laughed at me, saying, "You should see your face." Others in the crowd, mostly my family, also laughed. I just walked away, and he tried to catch up, calling me extra. I pushed him away, ordered an Uber, and left. I packed my things and stayed at a hotel, and now I'm at a friend's house. Both our families and my husband have been blowing up my phone, calling me childish and saying he's a good man and it was just a joke. He's been apologizing, saying he didn't think I'd get that emotional. It was supposed to be the happiest day of our lives, and he embarrassed me in front of everyone with a prank he knew I hated. He ruined a $500 cake, my makeup, hair, and my dress. I still love him, but I'm wondering if I was too hard on him, especially since everyone else seems to think so. What should I do? Guys, what's the most down bad you have ever been? I started talking to this girl one night after she messaged me through social media. We began talking about common interests with subtle flirting here and there. The following day I asked her to send a photo of herself. She proceeded to send 4 pictures, 2 of which she was in baggy clothing, the other 2 being top angles. All of these photos had 2 things in common. All had filters, and all hid what everything below her neck looked like. I instantly suspected she was a beluga. After talking for a little while, our conversation shifted to a more intimate context. She told me about some of her fantasies such as getting tied down and tickled. I refused to follow through with that one but told her I'd fulfill some of her other ones. We made a plan for her to sneak over while my parents were out of my house the next day. Well, the next day rolls around and we talk about her coming over, which she later does. After waiting an hour for her bus to get to my house, I waited outside so she knew which house was mine. As she walked to my driveway, I noticed something about her. Not only was she hiding her body for good reason, but she was also very unattractive in person. Maybe a solid 2 out of 10. To put the cherry on top of the cake, she smelled like a mix of body odor and cigarettes. Me, not wanting to be rude as she had just traveled across town to do the devil's tango, walked her into my house and to my room. We put on a show on Netflix and began following through with what we had previously talked about, excluding the tickling. After finishing up what was and will be my worst intimate experience ever, we both just sat there. The post-nut was crazy. I actually went into my bathroom and took a long and hard look at myself in the mirror. I'm pretty sure a tear even streamed down my eye. I came back out and sat down. I sat there thinking about how I could get her out of my house without being rude. I finished a glass of water and said I was going to go fill it. I quickly pulled out my phone and bribed my sister to come knock on my door and tell me my parents were home early and that they needed me to help them unload groceries. I told her I was sorry and that I needed to go help. I told her to take the next bus, which was 20 minutes later. For the next 2 hours I sat there smelling like her and deeply regretting everything I'd just done. This inspired me to go do household chores to keep my mind off of what happened. AITA for threatening to kick out my niece after she hacked my daughter's Roblox account. My 38F daughter, 13F, has been playing this game called Roblox since lockdown first started as a way of playing with her friends virtually as well as curing her boredom. She was obsessed with this Roblox game that's set in a school because she missed her friends so much and it allowed her to stay connected with them. Her interest in video games has developed into an interest into technology. She's by far at the top of her IT class and has even started learning how to code in order to make her own game. My sister, 34F, and niece, 10F, have recently had to move in with us after my sister discovered that her husband was having an affair. They're staying at my house for the time being while she saves up money for a place of their own. My niece and daughter usually get along, and they both bond over their interest in Roblox. Last week, my daughter was completely distraught and crying nonstop. She said that she saw her cousin playing on a Roblox game and realized her cousin's avatar had a lot more items than usual. She decided to join her, only to realize that her account had been hacked and she'd lost nearly every item she had on her favorite Roblox game. She'd lost 800K of the in-game currency and nearly her entire inventory. My husband's Bible-loving homophobic mother is stalking and harassing us. My homophobic mother-in-law burned our house down while we were in it. We made a big mistake when we didn't take mother-in-law's threats seriously enough. We thought that she's like a dog that barks but doesn't bite. Speaking of dogs, the only hero in this story is actually our dog. Heavens bless our dog. It happened at night. My husband and I, we're heavy sleepers, we were dreaming sweet dreams and didn't notice anything. If our dog hadn't jumped on our bed and barked, waking us up, we would probably both be dead now. I'm a firefighter myself and I realized that the fire was too big already, we couldn't put it out by ourselves. We escaped through the window, fortunately unharmed. Somebody had called the firefighters who happened to be my colleagues, which was a weird situation. It was the first time they had to work on their buddy's house. They tried to work as fast and as efficiently as they could, but our house is damaged beyond repair, we can't live in it anymore. Mother-in-law got caught and basically dug her own grave because she herself said that she was hoping till the last minute that her son would come to his senses, break up with me and start to date women, but he didn't, and she felt ashamed that she has created such a deformed human being, so she decided that it is better to have no son than gay son. She basically said she wanted to unalive him. So even though at first what happened was classified as arson with the intent to damage the property, which would mean a softer sentence, after those words it became arson with the intent to endanger life, and that means much more severe punishment, even up to life imprisonment. Our lawyer said that most likely she will not receive the maximum sentence because no one has died, but she will receive at least a couple years behind bars. And there's not much her lawyer can do to help her because she confessed. And she said such a stupid thing. Well, but my son's F-slur husband is a firefighter, why didn't he save his house? In the middle of the night, just awoken, no gear, no tools, no equipment, caught completely unaware by the fire. Are you serious, mother-in-law? You think that just because I'm a firefighter means I can put the fire out with my bare hands? Many people think that house fire is like they see in the movies, flames and light, but actually it is a complete darkness. The smoke makes the room so dark within minutes that you can't even see your own hands. House fire is always like a dark night. Now we're living with our friends while we find another place to live. Our clothing, our documents, passports, marriage certificate, everything is gone, but of course, those are just things, we can buy them again. We're alive, that's the most important thing. My husband is done with her. He's so very upset that his own mother wished him dead just because he's gay. If before this he still hoped that their relationship could be fixed, now he doesn't want to hear a single word about her anymore. Her homophobic hate almost unalived us. And it is our own fault as well because we didn't give her actions and words the seriousness they deserved. We know some gay people who also have homophobic parents, but they have never tried actually unaliving their children. I guess that's why we didn't think that it might happen to us. Attorneys, what was your most satisfying case? In 1973, my parents had enough money to build a little ranch house in the country. The small bank in town approved the mortgage and the bank signed a contract to give Bob the money to build the house. Bob, as it turns out, was overbooking himself all over town, leaving his clueless minions to do the actual work. The build took longer and longer, with more and more work having to be ripped out and redone. We're not talking about using the wrong color paint or nailing up some wonky trim. Here, the architect forgot to fully erase a line on the blueprints and the framers built a wall through the bathtub. My mother was told don't put anything heavy in the kitchen cabinets because they were attached to the drywall, not the studs, using a few roofing nails through the back of each cabinet. The garage door opening was framed into the living room instead of towards the driveway, and so on. When the bank's representative showed up for the final inspection, my parents met him in the front yard and refused to sign off on Bob's work. Then the representative became angry, as the bank had paid Bob a lot of money. He strode to the front door and pulled on the doorknob, whereupon the entire door, casing included, fell on him. It had simply been wedged, not nailed, into place. The bank called Bob, who finally showed up to supervise the work himself. The only problem was that Bob wasn't any better at building a house than his minions were. My parents still refused to sign off on the house. My mother was a stay-at-home mom in a nasty rental with 2 tiny children while my dad was working 2 jobs while this was going on. Throughout the entire process, the bank and Bob treated them very poorly, bullying my mom and lying to my dad. What should have been an exciting time for my parents was ruined. My mom cried a lot. My dad got depressed. Finally, the bank threatened my parents with foreclosure and Bob threatened to sue my parents for breach of contract because the bank refused to pay him any more money. So my exhausted parents went to an attorney and gave him the rundown. Plumbing, electrical, tiling issues, the whole sorry mess. My parents were scared. All they had was their small down payment savings. So if this became a lengthy court battle, the bank and Bob would win. The attorney, Tom, was kind, but my dad said he could tell that he and Mom were doomed from Tom's facial expressions as he sorted through the paperwork. Then, abruptly, Tom smiled. Let's get everyone together for a meeting, he told my parents. Tomorrow. So my parents, Tom, the bank's representative, the bank's attorney, Bob, and Bob's attorney met at the bank. Tom didn't give anyone else time to begin. He said, well, my clients have decided that they no longer want this house. Please remove it. Everyone else start to laugh. Remove it? Have you lost your mind? Tom, in a sweeping, theatrical gesture, placed a deed on the table. My clients own the land the house is sitting on outright. They no longer want the house. Get the house off my client's land. Bob's attorney stared at the deed, and then turned and stared at Bob. You built a house on land you don't own? Bob nodded. The bank's attorney started yelling at the bank's representative. You didn't finance the land the house is on? The representative stammered. No? Tom said firmly, as I said, gentlemen, you're trespassing on my client's land. I expect the house to be removed and the land returned to its original state, at once. My dad said he'll remember the blank looks everyone on the other side of the table passed to one another for his whole life. Sure, the bank could foreclose on a house that wouldn't exist by the end of the week, with no way to recoup the money. They didn't even own the land it was on. Bob was out the 50% he'd paid out of pocket, plus he was on the hook for tearing down the house and removing it. On top of that, the bank would undoubtedly want him to repay the initial 50% they'd given him. Could they have gone after my parents? Sure, a foreclosure would have meant bad credit for my parents moving forward. They might lose their down payment, but to sign off on the house in its condition at that time would have meant thousands and thousands of dollars in cash to replace/repair everything from the roof to the basement before the house could be safely lived in. The bank knew my parents didn't have that kind of money. They're the ones who approved the mortgage. Suddenly, my parents were good people. It was all such a misunderstanding, and the bank and Bob couldn't do enough for them. The house was brought in line with the original blueprints and specifications immediately, at no extra cost to my parents, but at considerable cost to Bob. My parents signed the mortgage. Bob got the rest of his money, and just about broke even on the build. The bank's representative was fired, and Tom, attorney extraordinaire, got a stinging tale of triumph to recall to fellow attorneys for the rest of his life. I broke up with my girlfriend because of the Barbie movie. I 24M watched Barbie with my girlfriend a few days ago. And in Barbie and Ken's seemingly trivial, fantastical world, I found a life-altering realization that compelled me to end a relationship that had spanned 2 years of my life. It wasn't an easy decision to make. She was my rock. Those first few months leading up to us being together was like a delicate dance as she was still healing from a past relationship. She was so unsure about being with me, probably for fear of repeating past mistakes. But she took the chance, and we grew together slowly. She even stopped talking to her ex after a year or so since they had been good friends, regardless of the relationship they had. But circumstances brought them back in contact when his mother was hospitalized. She was too afraid to tell me, scared it might upset me. And while I know there was no infidelity involved, the lack of communication hurt me. She immediately stopped speaking to him from that moment over a year ago and hasn't spoken to him since. As if that wasn't enough, 2 months after that incident her parents were actively pushing her into talks of marriage with a guy they favored. We had an understanding that she would tell me everything and keep her interactions with this guy to a bare minimum and keep it as dry as possible. But when I accidentally saw a 2-month-long snap streak with him on her phone, the old wounds were reopened. She thought she had already told me, but we both soon realized that she had completely forgotten about it. I know snap streaks seem like such a trivial issue, but in the grand scheme of things, it was pretty massive, considering the trials and tribulations we've both been through. I was left in a strange place, feeling as if I was constantly in the shadows of other men in her life, waiting for some level of openness that never really came. But through all of this, she remained my rock, my support. She was there for me. During the grueling days of university, the job search, and everything else life threw at me. She was there for my family, always kind, always ready to help. Watching the Barbie movie was supposed to be an escape from reality, but it turned out to be the opposite. In Ken, I saw myself. He existed to serve Barbie. Without her, he felt empty and devoid of purpose. But throughout the movie and after some unfortunate patriarchy, Barbie helps Ken discover his own worth and realizes he is not defined by Barbie, but rather, he is enough just being himself. And believe it or not, this realization shook me. I had been clinging to the comfort and support she provided, blind to the mounting issues. But I had to face the truth, I was enough. My worth wasn't tied to her, my happiness wasn't dependent on her validation. Sho is a wonderful person, truly, but we had issues that we couldn't resolve, issues that were hurting us both. And all I am Ryan Gosling jokes aside, I am like Ken, still searching for my purpose, my calling. But I know that I am enough. I'm not sure where Lil end up, but I have faith in the journey. She deserves the same chance to find her own way without the weight of my expectations or the shadows of her past. So, here I am, a guy who realized his worth after watching a Barbie movie. It's strange how life lessons can come from the most unexpected places. It's been a challenging period, but I'm grateful for the insight. I'm ready to face the world, as me, just me. I am enough. How my girlfriend breaking up with me helped me discover my sexuality. Update, I decided that, after too long a time of holding my feelings in, I wanted to tell him the truth. So, about 2 weeks ago, when we were walking back to our cars after working out, I told him that I figured out I was bisexual and that I liked him. At first, I was afraid that dumping all of my emotions on him and my mini journey that I had been on would be a bad thing. He gave me a bit of a speech before answering, and from what he said, he'd been feeling the exact same way about me. So, when he said yes, I had to contain myself from jumping up and down. I was just so happy, and he even said something I thought was so funny. He said, "I can only catch you staring at my butt so many times before I start getting suspicious." I guess I wasn't so subtle about it. But, for the 2 weeks that we've been together, I've been completely obsessed with him. He's just perfect in every way, and it really feels like I found love. We fit perfectly in every way, and he takes me on dates, and we still work out together all the time. It feels like I found a best friend and a boyfriend, all in one. However, I will be honest, we haven't had intimacy yet. I'm honestly scared that I won't be good at it with a dude. While I'm not a virgin, I'm just a bit anxious about it, and I don't know how to tell him. I'm sure I'll figure out the right way, I just don't want to rush into it too fast. I'm comfortable just going on dates and hanging out together instead of rushing into the more serious parts of the relationship so fast. Am I the a-hole for forcing my stepdaughter to cut her hair even though she loves it? My husband has an 11-year-old daughter from a previous relationship. She has incredibly long blonde wavy hair, just past her bottom. It's a nightmare to take care of. It frequently tangles and she always needs help brushing and styling it before school. I'm not a morning person and I do not like having to wake up early to do a kid's hair. It's expensive to maintain as she requires more products. She insists on using hair oils which can cost around $5 and only last a few weeks. She also insists she has to use curly hair shampoo instead of regular shampoo and conditioner which is often over $6 per bottle, and she goes through it at a fast rate. She won't use a regular brush on it as she insists it breaks her hair and hurts, so she uses a wide tooth comb which takes a long time to brush when she could be doing other more productive things such as homework or helping me with chores. I decided she had become obsessed with her hair, and I do not want her to become vain, so I decided it needs to be cut. I don't see it as a big deal as I have always had shoulder-length hair as my hair does not grow very fast and I get frequent trims. It's a lot more practical. I took her to the hairdressers as normal. In the car on the way down she said she wants to make sure the hairdresser doesn't cut too much. I politely explained that I would like her to cut her hair to shoulder length as it has become a burden. At first she thought I was joking, but when she realized she started to cry. When we got to the salon, the hairdresser was reluctant to cut her hair due to her tears, but I explained the trouble we have maintaining it, and assured cutting it would be best for her. In the end the stylist agreed and cut her hair. The stylist braided her hair then cut it. She kept it. Her hair was now just past shoulder length, and looked a lot darker. The car journey home was silent. I offered her McDonald's but she refused. She went straight to her room when we got back. My husband went up to see her when he got home and apparently found her on her bed sobbing holding her old hair. My husband immediately called her mother to come and collect her, and as soon as my stepdaughter was out the door, he started yelling. Her mother also came in and gave me a mouthful. I explained my reasoning but my husband wouldn't budge. He said if I had issues he would have done her hair in the mornings and that he didn't mind paying for the products. He was so furious he said he no longer trusts me around his daughter, and doesn't know if he can be with a woman who he doesn't trust with her. This broke my heart.
My boyfriend threw my puppy against the wall during an argument, please help. My boyfriend is ex-military. I always knew that he had extreme anger issues, but never in my life would I think that he would take it out on an innocent animal like I watched him do the other night. I feel completely traumatized after witnessing him abuse my 3-month-old puppy in the way he did, and I have no idea what to do next. I feel completely trapped and terrified. As I said, my boyfriend has always had some anger issues, and he usually gets angry at me when he thinks other men are checking me out in public or he sees that random guys have followed me on Instagram. We have had so many fights where I have tried to assure him that I would never cheat on him and he is the only man in my life. But he always ends up screaming at me and calling me a liar and saying that I like the attention of other guys, and if I didn't, I would dress differently or delete my Instagram. Over the 8 months that we've been dating, I have gotten so used to his outbursts and his constant screaming, even though I know it's totally unhealthy. I know for sure that I'm in a toxic relationship. I want to leave him, but I am truly scared of him. He is ex-military and an extremely strong, connected man. I fear that if I leave him, he will track me down and hurt me physically, or worse. We don't live together, but he spends a lot of time at my apartment. 2 weeks ago, I adopted a German Shepherd puppy. I remember seeing him at the shelter and instantly falling in love with him. Ever since I brought him home, my boyfriend has been complaining about him. He says that he stinks, he's too loud, and that I should have never gotten a dog. I love my boyfriend, but I love my puppy in a different way, since he is just an innocent little animal, and it's killing me that I brought this innocent baby into a dangerous situation. The other night, my boyfriend was screaming at me because he had noticed that I had a new male Instagram follower. He was throwing and breaking things usual, and insisting that I didn't care about him because I wasn't changing my ways. I really was just exhausted since I had a long day. Honestly, I was just exhausted with him. I wasn't really engaging in the fight, I was just laying on my bed staring at the ceiling, trying to dissociate. I guess this only made him more upset, because the next thing I know, he picked up my puppy so hard and fast that the poor thing literally squealed out of fear. My boyfriend screamed in my face, "So is this what I have to do for you to give a F?" And to my horror, he hurled my innocent baby directly at the wall. My poor baby made another squealing noise, and I will never be able to forget the way that he ran away from us into a corner, shaking and whimpering. I started crying and trying to console my puppy, but he was still scared since my boyfriend was still in the room yelling at us both. I just cowered in the corner with my dog until my boyfriend eventually left us alone and went to sleep. I'm scared for me and my puppy. I want to get as far as possible as I can from my boyfriend. He's a monster, and I cannot believe that I allowed him to take out his anger on my poor innocent baby boy. I know now that I need to do everything I can to protect myself and my new baby, before it's too late.
I lied about being pregnant and having a miscarriage to hurt my ex. My husband John, of 2 years together for 5, has been cheating on me with his female best friend Lisa. After catching John in a series of lies, I decided to snoop around his phone. I know this is wrong, but the two of us had shared our phone passwords in the past, so I felt like I wasn't entirely breaching his privacy. Either way, I found intimate conversations between him and Lisa to make matters even worse. John and I had recently started trying for kids after I got a new job, as we were finally in a good financial situation. So not only was he having unprotected intimacy with me several times a week, he was also doing it unprotected with another woman just as often. Lisa has an IUD, and I know they're not using protection based on their text. I secretly collected evidence of the affair for weeks and contacted a divorce lawyer. I started declining intimacy for my husband, claiming that I didn't feel up for it, as the thought of my husband having intimacy with another woman and me made me physically ill. I vomited several times from the imagery alone. I was able to keep myself together for weeks. However, I caved and ended up confronting the two of them while they were hooking up at Lisa's house. When they answered the door, they were clearly disheveled. I immediately started berating John, pushing my way into the house. Lisa interrupted me, saying how dare I talk to him like that, and demanded I leave. The two of us started a screaming match. I don't even remember what I said, but Lisa got so angry she tried to slap me. I was able to register what she was going to do and back up and grab her arm in time. At that point, I lost it and punched her in the nose. I grabbed John and said we were leaving, but he refused to come with me. Instead, he was doting on Lisa. When she noticed that her nose was bleeding, she Sparta kicked me in the stomach, knocking me out of the doorway, which was open this whole time, and was catching her neighbor's attention. I was on the ground, disoriented from hitting the concrete. I held my stomach in pain, and in that moment, I don't know what came over me. I burst into tears and screamed out, "I'm pregnant, you idiot." I'm not. All of our trying for a kid amounted to nothing, which I now see as a blessing. But I wanted to hurt them, embarrass them, ruin their lives. I ran to my car and stayed at a friend's place. John tried contacting me. He said he broke things off with Lisa and wanted another chance. He made the assumption that I was rejecting intimacy and that the few times I vomited was because of morning sickness. After several days of him desperately trying to contact me, I told him I had a miscarriage and the next time he hears from me will be through my lawyers. I have now blocked him. The affair and my miscarriage has spread around their friend circle, and John and Lisa have been completely ostracized. Several of John's ex-friends have reached out to me offering their condolences. Even his family and my family have heard about it. I feel like crap for lying like this, but don't know how to take it back. My wife's mother has inserted herself into our intimate life. My wife and I have been romantically involved for 7 years and married for the last 5 years. My wife and her mother are very close. My wife's father passed away when she was young, and it has just been the two of them for the past 20 plus years. It was actually really nice when my wife and I started dating. I inherited this amazing mother figure, as I never had parents myself, and we have all become very close over the past 7 years. My mother-in-law is very kind, loving and open. However, she can be a bit weird or quirky at times. She frequently asks about our sex life, about when we are going to give her grandchildren, and sometimes asks me if her daughter is satisfying me in bed. My wife dismisses those questions as the typical sort of questions that Asian parents ask, but in my opinion there is more to it. There are 2 other stories that stand out to me as even more strange. One day about 4 years ago, when my wife and her mother went out shopping, Her mom suggested getting honker implants together. My wife laughed it off, but her mom was apparently very serious and insisted she would pay for them both. My wife turned down the offer, but then about a month later, her mother had suddenly gone through with it and now had a pair of milkers. Another strange example is how my mother-in-law took a tour trip to Thailand recently. She came back happily bragging that she went to a brothel while there. Not that she just walked by one or went inside one, but that she was a paying customer at one. My wife usually brushes off this behavior as if it was normal, but sometimes we acknowledge the absurdity and laugh at it together. However, my wife has a very difficult time saying no to her mother, as in she cannot do it. In the entire time I have known her, I have never once seen my wife stand her ground. My wife has tried saying no to her a few times, but as her mother pressures her she inevitably caves into her mother's wishes. One example is from early last year when my mother-in-law wanted us to buy a new car. Not that she wanted us to buy her a car, which I offered to do, but that my wife and I had to buy a new car. We both agreed that we did not need a new car and that it wasn't her mother's decision to make. After several days of back and forth, we ended up buying ourselves a new car. I still don't understand why that was necessary, but we have a car payment again because of it. We have even tried being the bad guy when this happens, and saying I was the one who didn't want to do something, but in every case, my wife eventually gives in and goes to her mother's side, even when she really doesn't want to do something. This topic is one of the few topics that we regularly argue about, although not very frequently. So on Friday night, the most bizarre thing yet happened. My wife and I often sync up the end of our commutes home from work, so that we can drive home together. We managed to get on the same train as usual Friday, and drove home together. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary as we drove home, but we were both surprised to see her mother's car in the driveway when we arrived home. We went inside expecting to be greeted by her mom, but everything was quiet. No one appeared to be in the house. We looked around a bit and my wife tried texting her mother to see what was up. While we waited for a response, we decided to change out of our work clothes and into what we normally wear around the house. When I entered our bedroom, I was shocked to see her mother sitting on our bed in nothing but a towel. I turned around, looking back at my wife and trying to give her mother some privacy. Her mother spoke, but not in English. My wife stopped me with her hands up in front of her while she leaned around me to look at her mother. They continued not talking in English, which is extremely rare for them to do in front of me, and I continued to look at the floor with my back to her mother. My wife looked at me, said something like it's okay and slowly directed me backwards towards the bed. When I was closer to the bed, my wife gently shoved me onto the bed. I looked away from her mother, still trying to be polite despite being very confused as to what was happening. My wife continued to reassure me with her words while her mother continued to speak to her in words I did not understand. My wife unbuttoned my shirt and they both pulled it off me. Just laid there completely frozen. My mother-in-law called my name and told me to look at her. When I did, she was no longer wearing a towel. My mother-in-law started to kiss me while my wife unclothed. My wife kept reassuring me that everything was fine and we did it, in front of her mother, who just watched us. Afterwards her mother told us to get cleaned up and that she would make dinner. Then she just walked out of the room like nothing happened. My wife was acting normal too. I tried to talk to her briefly when we were alone, but she just told me everything is okay and that we should go eat dinner. I went to bed fairly early Friday night, just to kind of be alone. My wife came to bed quite late from what I could tell. I didn't sleep much Friday night. I woke up early Saturday, Sunday, and today as I am physically uncomfortable all night and my stomach is in knots from worrying. My wife stayed in bed late both Saturday and Sunday morning, which is unusual for her. I tried talking to her this weekend, but my wife brushed off what had happened like it was normal. Am I the a-hole for telling everyone that my girlfriend secretly writes cringe fanfiction? My girlfriend Sandra and I have been together for about a year now. The other day, I was out with some mates and after our night, I was slightly tipsy and I thought of surprising Sandra at home, since I have keys to her flat. When I got there, I noticed she was asleep on the couch and her laptop was on the coffee table. She hates sleep mode so her laptop was on, and not even locked. She had a Word document and it seemed like she was working on it. I caught some words and couldn't help myself, so I started reading. I took the laptop to the kitchen to not wake her up. Turns out it was romantic fanfiction about one of her favorite TV series. Nothing steamy, just some silly, girly, romantic kind of stuff. You know the ones teenage girls dream of and then realize that no man actually behaves like that. I honestly laughed out loud a couple of times at how ridiculous it was. I was curious and desired to spy a little bit to see if she'd written more and discovered her accounts on 2 platforms for fanfiction. Anyway, she's written a lot of them. All cutesy, girly stories and some naughty stuff. When she woke up in the morning, I confronted her about this and she was defensive and started going on about privacy and stuff. I told her to cut the crap and to admit that she feels dissatisfied about our relationship and that's why she's writing. I gave her a reality check and said the soft men she writes about were unrealistic. She was really angry and kicked me out. I told her I'm not one of her characters and won't tolerate her mood swings, but she still kicked me out. Later that day, we were meeting our friends for lunch. Sandra came but barely spoke to me. At some point, we were talking about something and I mentioned what Sandra writes, hoping that people will laugh and one guy did. The rest just ignored my news, which kind of surprised me. I thought maybe they hadn't heard, so I just said it again but a little bit louder. I tried to continue the topic and understand why everyone seemed okay with the cringe, but Sandra called me ins-hole and went to the bathroom. My friend told me it would be best if I left, but I didn't want to do so because I didn't do anything bad. When Sandra came back she told me her writing is her private thing and I'm ins-hole for bringing it up. I told her to grow up and call me when she comes to her senses, but she hasn't called me since. I told my other friends and they agreed with me that what Sandra writes is cringe and should have been called out, and they don't think I am this hole, so I'm still confused about my other friends' reaction. I need an impartial opinion. Am I this hole for telling my friend? Am I the a-hole for refusing to feed my husband's nieces and nephews? I have been with my husband Caden for 8 years and we have been married for 4. We have a 2-year-old together and we're expecting baby number 2. My relationship with Caden's brother and sister-in-law has never been great. She got really weird around me pretty quickly and things soured from there. Caden told me his sister-in-law was jealous of the fact I hit it off so well with his mom and sister, but especially his sister, and that his brother had always kind of followed his Sil's lead. Seems his sister-in-law was around the family since she was a kid, and she and my brother-in-law have been together since high school. She always thought she would be like the second daughter for the family, but sister-in-law and her have always clashed a little and were never tight. Caden has been great about standing up for me when needed, and he has shut down his sister-in-law on more than one occasion when she was being rude. One of the things that has resulted from all this is Caden's sister-in-law insisted I will never be her children's aunt. They have specifically been told I am not their aunt, and they are not to call me Aunt Emmy. I have been kept at a distance from the kids during family gatherings, and generally sister-in-law will ensure I don't interact with her kids. Caden sees them less as a result because he refuses to have me leave our home so they can visit, something his sister-in-law tried to insist on. My relationship with sister-in-law is the best though, and we are close. She has a child the same age as mine, and she will come over and we will hang out with our toddlers. Since she's here so often, I will often have enough food for both kiddos. She has picked up some inspo from me on how to introduce food to toddlers, since she said her kiddo eats better since they started hanging out with us. She mentioned it at a family dinner recently because her parents commented how much better her kiddo was eating too in the different plates she used. She said it was all thanks to me and was saying how she really owed me one. Caden's sister-in-law asked why she hangs out with me so much and never spends time with her. It brought up some of the underlying issues simmering around between us. She then asked why I never do that for her kids and why I'm not sharing my vast knowledge with her. Caden jumped in and said she has made her feelings clear about me and has ordered me to stay away from her kids, so how am I supposed to do any of that with her or them? The very next day she asked if the kids could come over for lunch and I said no. She asked about some other day and I said no again. She then told me I was in butt and excluding her kids. I told Caden what happened and he talked to his brother, or more like fought with him. I do feel kinda bad for the kids and would love to get to know them better, but I don't trust their parents in any of this. Am I the a-hole? My addict and abusive ex died, but the money he left did not go to our daughter. It turns out it was left entirely in my name. A few weeks ago, I got the news that my ex had died unexpectedly. This man was seriously abusive to me and horrible to my daughter. We've been separated for 3 years. He was a substance addict. During our relationship he physically abused me, mentally abused me, endangered our daughter many times to support his substance addiction. I consistently supported him in his recovery, and even after we separated, I was supportive of him and his new girlfriend in their recovery together. I made a post about this right after his death. His union hall reached out to me, saying that we would receive the benefits from his pension and life insurance policy. It's a complicated situation, because there was a lot of trouble with his family and his new girlfriend. They have been horrible. Just vicious to me and my daughter. My daughter has special needs. I went into debt, despite working in healthcare through the pandemic, paying for her medical necessities myself. He has not seen her or paid any child support in about a year, and before that he was inconsistently in and out of her life. Even when he was out of prison, and out of rehab, he would cancel or reschedule visitations about 40% of the time. Anyhow, after his services, the union hall reached out to me again to clarify. I guess he had named me as beneficiary, not my daughter. His family, and his new fiancée, have been fighting it with the hall. I guess they were legally trying to contest it, I wasn't even aware, but as it stands he named me as beneficiary and his pension and life insurance benefits will be going straight to me. I was really feeling guilty about accepting the money when I thought it was for my daughter, mostly because I felt it was just bad juju to benefit so financially from the death of somebody who hurt so much, and who we were on such bad terms with. Now that I know the benefits are going directly to me, it's even more complicated. I feel more guilt. It's just a complicated situation, I'm trying to process it. It's hard because most of the people in my life who love me are really nasty about him and his family. All they can see is everything that he did to me. They feel like I deserve the money, and I shouldn't feel guilty at all. The new fiancée is out there telling everybody that I'm the bad guy. She hates me, despite the fact that I literally supported both of them, gave them a car when they didn't have one to pick her up for visitations. I allowed them to cancel visitations, never enforced the child support schedule when they were low on funds or late on payment. I literally took care of our special needs child alone, week after week, night after night, while she couldn't sleep, and was in and out with various infections, and he was spending 2 to 5 nights a week at the bar she worked at getting intoxicated and pouring money into her tip jar while not paying anything for his daughter. Meanwhile they claim that I'm a terrible mother who used my daughter as a pawn against him. She says I'm still in love with my ex. I try not to care about their opinions, but it causes drama when we have to interact. So now I'm sad to gain financially, I'm going to receive all this money, and while I understand it's a wonderful situation for us, I kind of hate that it's at the expense of him, and her. As horrible as they are, I always thought it was gross how much they seem to find pleasure in my suffering, and I don't want to do the reverse. I cried my eyes out in a McDonald's today. All because I found out that my roommate actually likes me back. I've been questioning my sexuality for a while and I finally came to terms with the fact that I like men. Specifically, I really like my roommate. He's very sweet and talented. I only realized that I really liked him a few weeks ago. Me and him both play guitar, and one night we decided to practice together. I couldn't get my fingers to move like I wanted them to, so this guy reaches from behind me and moves my fingers to the right spots. I very quickly realized I wasn't straight afterwards. I stayed up all night for almost a week because I couldn't get him off my mind. So today we went to McDonald's together as brothers. I don't know what got into me, but I just sorta told him everything about how I feel about him and such. Turns out that he likes me too, and he's felt the same way for a while. I cried. I effing cried so hard in a McDonald's. It was pathetic. I don't know why I started crying. Joy? Sadness? Relief? It's really dumb looking back on it a few hours later. Also afterwards he kissed me on the cheek and said I tasted salty SMH.
I cancelled my brother's wedding over a joke his fiancée made. My brother met his now fiancée Ella at a party 3 years ago. Honestly, we never got along, but I always tried to put up a peaceful front because my brother seemed blissfully happy with her. Ella was mean to me constantly. She would make comments about my weight, make fun of my scars on my arms, my makeup, and especially my dog. She hated animals and hated that I would bring my Labrador to my parents' or my brother's house. It always just felt like something aimed to hurt me. When the two got engaged, she asked me to be her maid of honor since she has no sisters or many girlfriends, and since my brother seemed thrilled, I obliged. What I failed to realize when I accepted the role was that to her maid of honor meant planning the entire wedding. Like I was booking venues, florists, jazz bands, doing everything. Even worse, she expected me to put my credit card down for all of it. Every time I asked Ella about it, she would say that it would all be paid back by her parents before the wedding. Well, flash forward to last week, about 3 weeks before the wedding, and she's unbearable to be around. She can't last more than a few sentences before snapping at anyone. So when I of course brought up the money, it hit the fan. I asked if she had received the updated receipt of everything owed when she exploded. She called me a whole line of terrible names, but the one that stuck out was her saying, "What do you need the money for anyway? Your sick dog is dead now." My beautiful dog named Toasty died about a month before this after he fought the bravest battle with cancer. He was my sole dog and I was devastated. I blinked at her and simply left the room, having no energy to even respond to something so cruel. I went back to my car, and after the 20 silent minute drive home, I parked the car and immediately called the vendors and canceled any deposit under my card. Every single one. After almost 20 calls, all that was left of her wedding was the dress and the flower arch. I texted my brother a short explanation. I told him that every vendor would be contacting him if they wished to keep their services, and they were now responsible for covering everything. And that I would no longer be attending. It was a matter of minutes before my phone started to explode and I just turned it off. It's been a few days and I haven't talked to anyone but my mom, who thankfully understands where I was coming from. My brother has tried to call, but I just feel terrible. Both about what I did and about what she said. What compliment did you get that you won't forget? Every time I tell people I used to be extremely obese, they refuse to believe it because I didn't use Ozempic. When I was younger, I was convinced I was as skinny as Eugenia Cooney, but I was in for a rude awakening when I went into high school. Everyone knew me as the girl who even weighed more than a semi-truck full of baby whales. People found it funny to pick on the girl who was so delusional about being fat that she tried to hit on the teacher when she got in trouble, which didn't even work. They followed me around, yelling, "Yip yip," because supposedly I had the facial structure of Appa when he was devouring some cabbages. I tried everything for people to like me, even trying new clothes and makeup, but everyone told me I was putting lipstick on a pig. I just went home to eat, because food wouldn't tell me I looked like a cow or tell me to put a tub stopper in my mouth so I'd stop sucking all that food up. Food was my safe haven. The feeling of chewing down on some huge tub of Ben & Jerry's was the only way I could cope with my life. And when I found comfort in something else, which was running, I realized my weight was betraying me because I was eating for a family of 4 all the time. But eating was a part of life, so how was I supposed to beat it? The answer is you can't, but you can cheat it. All I had to do was find something physical that I enjoyed doing and do it every day. And luckily, I found something. Every morning before school, I'd go to the track and run a couple laps while listening to Frank Ocean. I was working out so hard that at some point I was burning more calories than I was eating. So, even if I ate an entire pizza, I was still hungry. It got to a point where I indulged more than I ever had before. My appetite was out of control and I was hungry all the time. There was nothing I could do to satisfy my hunger. I decided that the more I ate, the more I had to run. I was working so hard that, during senior year, I passed out at a relative's wedding. I wasn't waking up, so I was rushed to the hospital. At the hospital, I met the man that saved my life. When I woke up, he asked me questions about my eating habits, and he was surprised at how much of a feast I was eating every day. He said that while it was great that I was running every day, my eating habits were going to kill me eventually and I needed to stop eating for a family of 4. He told me that almost every person he's met who was overweight all had the exact same problem. He said it's entirely possible for me to lose weight and I should consider trying some sort of appetite suppressant to kill my questionable hunger. He recommended black tea and water. He explained that they aren't necessarily the best, but they get the job done. He talked to me about how his son had the exact same appetite problem, and he always found him in the kitchen no matter the time of day. He showed me pictures of him before his weight loss. I nearly laughed in front of the doctor's face and I felt bad because he was massive. Then he showed me a picture of him after he started taking appetite suppressants, and that's what motivated me. That's when I realized how much of an impact my eating habits had on my health. The doctor told me to come to his clinic if I needed checkups. I thanked him and we made a bet that I'd lose 40 pounds in 6 months. When I got back home from the hospital, instead of drinking nasty black coffee, I bought Obvi Elite pills online from a story I read, since it seemed to be an appetite suppressant that didn't taste like crap. I kept running no matter what to make sure I was still active though. After a week of using the Obvi Elite pills, I was only eating 1 meal a day and some snacks. I did notice though, If I wasn't consistent using the pills every day, then they wouldn't work. After 6 months of working out and using the AITA Elite pills, I no longer needed them, as the habit of eating a buffet every day had gone away. Not only did they curb my appetite, but they boosted my metabolism, which helped me burn fat. I even noticed a deeper change in my appearance throughout all this. I only expected to lose weight, but suddenly my skin looked nice, as if I had used a bunch of products on my face. And my hair looked shiny and was growing so fast. My hair had never been this long before. After going to a hairstylist and curling my hair, I looked even better than before. I even noticed that my nails had grown, and I started going to the nail salon to get them painted. I also found something more useful to do with my time by reading and playing the guitar. When I was ready, I went to that doctor's clinic for my checkup. When I got to the secretary, I saw the doctor's son writing, and that made my heart drop. He was so much cuter in person. He had me sucking in my stomach more, hoping he'd notice me. When I saw the doctor, he checked my pulse, my lungs, and my heart rate, and everything was normal. Now it was time for the moment of truth. I stepped on the scale and I saw him write down something on his clipboard. When I stepped off of the scale, he looked at me and put out his hand. I'll never forget when he told me, "Congrats, kid. You exceeded my expectations. 55 pounds. It was in that moment I knew that I could do anything. We talked about what I did for a bit, and he said that he was glad I took something like AITA Elite pills since the ingredients weren't bad for me, but he told me that only eating one meal a day was a little extreme, and that if I needed to, I could start drinking meal replacement shakes to get back into healthier habits." I thanked him for all his help and for the motivation, but before I left I had to ask him. I asked if his son was single. He told me he'd make another bet. "If you lose 100 pounds in a healthy manner, I'll put in a good word for you. I already like you." As you can tell, I took that personally.
Girlfriend wanted an open relationship, so I broke up with her. Now she wants to get back together. I, 23 male, was dating my ex, 23 female, up until a month ago. We were together for 4 years before that. So before we broke up, she was acting distant for a good month. Then as of last month, she sat me down and asked for an open relationship. The minute those words came out of her mouth, I broke up with her. I came into this relationship expecting a monogamous relationship, and now she wanted to change the relationship. I only want to be with one person. If we couldn't agree on that, I saw no future. With the way she was acting before this, I can't trust her, and even if she wasn't acting shady, I wouldn't be able to trust her anyway for suggesting it. Those are some of the reasons I decided to break up with her in that moment, even though it might seem harsh. In my opinion, if someone wants a relationship like that, the relationship should start like that for it to be healthy, not just dumped on your partner after years of monogamy. Now I've been getting texts and voicemails from her crying to take her back and that she didn't mean it. I'm not sure what to think. Some people have been telling me that I acted too rash and didn't even give us time to work it out, and that it was cruel of me to do that. Is this something I acted too quick with or not? Having diarrhea is my favorite thing in the entire world. Yes, that's right. I love to have diarrhea. One of my favorite things to do is take a laxative on weekends when I have absolutely nothing to do, and I know I'll be at the house all day. There are so many aspects of it that make it one of the best experiences. The first aspect I love is the rush. Just going about my business and then, all of a sudden, knowing that I might poop my pants, that it's time to get on a toilet right now and nothing else matters. It's an adrenaline rush when the stomach starts to gurgle, and you know you can't stop what's about to happen, that I am totally at the mercy of my bowels. The second aspect is simply the feeling. I love the feeling of relief I get in my stomach, the sensation of it rushing out of me, and it's one of those good, burning feelings in my rear end too. I love that fiery sensation. Then, when you go to wipe, it's like scratching the ultimate itch. To put it simply, from start to finish, the feeling of diarrhea has multiple aspects that all feel good, and each of them has a special place in my heart. The third aspect I love is the smell. It's like when you have a good fart that really stinks, and you kind of sniff it in and think, dang, I just did that. The smell of diarrhea is like opening a sewer line right in my toilet, and I love it. It's just a great scent to sit there and enjoy for a minute, a nasty type of good that makes you feel a little dirty. The fourth aspect would have to be looking at what came out. Just standing to wipe and looking at what once used to be a perfectly clean toilet that is now black, just black water with black spatter all around the bowl of the toilet. I love to stand there for a second and look at it, thinking, dang, look at all that bad stuff I just expelled from my body. It's a great feeling to look at it and know how you've just cleansed your body. To put it simply, I highly recommend diarrhea. Thanks for watching. Follow for more.
Serious, what was something you saw you were definitely not supposed to see? Borrowed my dad's camera, found out he was gay. Happened when I was 7. I found the Tom and Jerry DVD I had lost, in the back of a drawer. In celebration, I decided to watch it again. By the time my mother walked into the living room and saw me watching a threesome, I was already scarred for life. She took away the entire DVD collection. Dude robbed a gas station. I was riding my bike in the back, saw him take off his mask and get in a car. We made eye contact. I turned my head and acted like I didn't see anything. A bit boring, but I found an engagement ring in a closet 6 months before my boyfriend popped the question. In those 6 months I kept going back to the closet to put the ring on my finger and admire it. I most definitely was not supposed to see my sister's abortion paperwork, 20 years after, in a box in her old closet at the family home. Her business, I'll never ask her about it. My stepdad dancing around in my mom's red thong underwear. Their door was open and I went into the kitchen for something, but they didn't hear me walk down the hall. Red underwear is no longer considered sexy in my eye.
What are your humanoid/beast encounter stories? I had a beast stalk me in my kitchen. I think I'm going crazy. This all happened about 3 to 4 years ago when I lived in King and Queen County, VA, and had lived in a neighborhood, if you could even call it that. It was a small cul-de-sac. I'd only lived there for maybe a year and things were always a little off. From me almost getting kidnapped in my own yard to an old man running at me with a stick after chasing a squirrel near his yard, things weren't the safest. One night, maybe about 10 to 11 at night, I needed water and went to the kitchen. Our kitchen was at the back of the house and connected to the back porch that had a really big deck on it. 20 plus people and a good quality grill could easily fit on it with no problem. There was one big window above the sink with super thin curtains that was always open because we didn't have AC back then. So, I had gotten my bottle of water and while taking a sip I kind of felt like something was staring at me. So, I closed the fridge door and turned my whole body to look straight at the window and saw the thing. It was just staring at me with these sad dead looking eyes. The whole thing in general was so messed up looking I really don't know how to describe it. I was frozen a second, but for some reason I walked exactly 2 steps closer to the window, I guess because I just didn't understand what I was looking at, and the thing took off. I ran to the window and watched the thing run on all fours and jump over the neighbor's fence, causing their German shepherds to start going off, so I know it wasn't just my imagination. I became obsessed with it and drew it and showed my friends and even told and showed my dad, but they all laughed it off like some joke, and it's not a joke. I saw it pretty frequently after that. It would show up at my school, house, woods, everything, and there was a higher number of dead animals around that time too. After a few months it slowly started not appearing as much and completely stopped 2 to 3 months before I moved from that area. I generally forgot about the whole thing until me and my boyfriend were talking about cryptids, and I told him about what I saw. Now that I remember, I'm obsessed again and need help with what that thing was and if someone else has seen anything similar. I think I'm going crazy. No matter how many times I look up what it looked like or do deep dives on cryptids, nothing comes up, and I'm starting to think maybe everyone was right and it was just my imagination. But I know what I saw, and someone has to know what I'm talking about, so please someone help me. I'll leave some more recent drawings I did of what it looked like, and if I can find them, I'll post my old drawings as well if this gets enough, if any attention, period. Please, if you can give me some leads, I'm actually begging at this point. Have you ever experienced a frog stuck in your throat? I can't hold this in any longer. It's been 21 years, or at least as far back as my memory allows. I wonder if I've always felt this weight taking hold of me, or if it has been brewing silently within me for the longest time. I am now 24 years old. My earliest recollection goes back to when I was 3 years old, a time when I was used and mistreated by the very people I trusted. Trust came so naturally to me that I felt obligated to keep secrets that were never meant for me to bear. Perhaps I was too naive to know any better, to see beyond blind trust. Those individuals were 3 and 4 years older than me. They must have known the harm they were inflicting upon me. Throughout my childhood, I experienced constant urinary tract infections, feeling uneasy about cleaning myself properly because it somehow felt wrong. I faced consequences for that, but how could I explain to my mother that it was her nephews causing these issues? They made me promise not to tell, and I held on to that promise. But now, I am breaking it. Only to strangers, though. I can't bring myself to break my mother's heart with this revelation. She already knows how her sister subjected me to awful things, and knowing what her sister's children did to me would devastate her. This burden presses harder on the throat of the little girl who has held on to this secret for too long. But I am choosing to find the burner and turn off the stove. This abuse lasted until I was 8 years old, and for that, I am deeply sorry. My mother couldn't understand why I was constantly angry, and truthfully, I didn't fully comprehend it either. But I believe that hidden beneath that anger was a repressed rage from the abuse, with no outlet for sharing the devastation it caused my young body and soul. I remained angry for a while. On the other side, the woman my mother referred to as her sister had her own daughters, whom I knew as my cousins. Though not related by blood, we were family by choice. This continued from ages 6 to 12. They were 2 and 3 years older than me. I'm sorry. They involved me in what they called a secret game, emphasizing that no one could know about it. I became adept at keeping secrets. But these games had twisted rules. Why was I not allowed to speak? Why were they so aggressive? But one thing remains clear in my mind: I never allowed my little sister to partake in these games. As I recall this, the constriction in my throat eases. I will search for the means to extinguish this weight, to release this frog from within the pot. For your sake, I will find a way to remove this torment and bring you peace. I don't know whom I can confide in about your hidden pain once you free yourself from the clutches of this frog, but it will no longer be your burden to bear. I will shoulder it and be the support you needed, offering solace for the storming rage trapped within your small body. I accidentally fell into a family with my best friend, and it's the best thing to ever happen to me. I had a very rough childhood growing up. I didn't have a dad, and my mom was never really there because she had a rough battle with health issues and got hooked on narcotics. I had friends growing up, but I had my best friend since I was 12. Her name is Lily. We have been extremely close due to our childhood issues, and we had always been there for each other. We had talks of being together, but got cold feet because we were scared if it didn't work, we couldn't recover from that. When I was 18, I didn't really want to go to college. School had never been for me. So I went into a trade. I work long hours, but it's been worth it, and I make solid money right now for my position. I'll come back to this in a bit. When we were 19, Lily got pregnant by her boyfriend. The dude somehow managed to avoid child support payments and broke up with her, and has not seen the kid once in his life. Complete deadbeat. Makes me disgusted. Lily was scared, but I told her I would be here when she needed. She didn't have parents that would help, but I told her I'd help where I can when the kid gets here. Lo and behold, she gave birth to a beautiful little girl named Kelsey. I was there when she was born, and it was a weird moment. I don't know how to explain it, but I did feel happy for her. Now we're 21, and ever since then this little girl has had me wrapped around her finger. I've done my round of the diapers, bottles, middle of the night screaming, etc. Every day I get home from work we sit there and we watch her little shows, and we spend a lot of time together as the three of us as well. When we walk, she grabs my pointer finger with her whole hand because it's so little. She stands up and kisses me on the cheek after I change her, and she loved her snuggles where she just lays on top of me with her head laid up against my chest. As of recently, she has begun speaking. She has been calling me daddy. I've been feeling really weird about it lately. Feeling like it's not right, and that someday she needs to know the truth. I talked to Lily about it one night and got her opinion on it. She sat there with a slight grin and then she came up behind me and hugged me. She said you're the best dad she could ever ask for. And then proceeded to tell me we'll worry about talking to her when she understands. As far as she is concerned, you are her daddy, and you are to me as well. I turned around and hugged her. We had a long talk about what's been going on lately with us as we have been engaging in not so just friends activities, and she just said it like this: I like our family. I just kind of froze for a second and asked her, is this what we want to do? And she followed up by saying, I think we've been doing this for a while now, and then laughed. We had a great moment and agreed to be a family. I had told her I needed to run to the drugstore for some diapers for Kelsey. On the way there, I bursted into tears. I cried for maybe a good 30 minutes. I don't even know how I describe what I was thinking and feeling, but I was happy. I just know that there isn't a thing in this world I wouldn't do for those two. It feels like I can relax and reflect on everything that's happened to this point. But also I don't. I basically have a family I'm looking out for. Like no matter what happens, I have people who will depend on me, and something like that makes me want to be the best man I possibly can. In about another year, I will have my official license for my trade, giving me a substantial pay raise and a new job that I already have lined up. I've already started looking at houses and rings. We've also talked about having our own once I get my license. I don't know where I'm going with this, but I wanted to share it with someone, but I don't really have those people in my life, so thanks for reading. I didn't warn my ex about her new BF. I didn't warn my ex about her new BF, and I regret it every day. She didn't deserve what happened to her and I should have done something about it. But I was stupid, selfish, and didn't want to get involved in their business. My ex and I had been together for 3 years, but things started falling apart when she got a new job that required her to travel a lot. We tried to make it work, but eventually, the distance got to us. I thought we ended things on good terms until I found out she had moved on with someone new. I didn't care much at first. I mean, we were over, so why should I care who she dates? But then rumors started to pop up that her new BF was abusive. I didn't want to believe it at first, but when I saw pictures of bruises on her arms and face, it was hard to ignore. I confronted her about it, but she denied it all. She said she fell down the stairs and had been clumsy lately. I didn't know what to think, but deep down, I knew the truth. It wasn't until I saw her in person that I realized how bad it really was. Our paths crossed when I was out with friends and she was with her new BF. He was aggressive and controlling towards her. He kept touching her inappropriately and wouldn't let her talk to anyone else. It was sickening to watch. I wanted to do something, anything, but I hesitated. I didn't want to start a fight, or worse, get myself involved in their effed up relationship. I should have said something, warned her, but I didn't. And now, I'm left with the guilt of knowing I could have prevented what happened next. She was hospitalized with a broken arm and a concussion. Her BF claimed it was an accident, but I knew better. I tried to visit her at the hospital, but her family wouldn't let me see her. I don't know what happened to them after that. I tried to call her, but her number was disconnected. I asked around, but no one knew anything. It's like they disappeared off the face of the earth. I regret not warning her about her new BF, about what he was capable of. I don't know if she would have listened to me, but I should have tried. It's a lesson I'll never forget. I wish I could do something to make things right, to make sure she's safe and happy. But I'm powerless to do anything. All I can do is hope and pray that she's okay. I can only hope that she's found her way out of the darkness and found a way to be happy again.
I found false lashes in my boyfriend's bed. But I don't wear lashes. I am so devastated as I type this. I've just been crying all day, and I have no idea how to confront my boyfriend. I am 18 years old, and I'm in my very first relationship. We're the same age, but he's more experienced than me. He was my first everything, and I got attached to him faster than I expected. I am a super shy and quiet person. I fell for my boyfriend because he was the only person in the college history class who picked me when we needed to find partners. He gave me this big warm smile that day, and ever since then I've had feelings for him. I know I'm young, but I think I'm in love with him. Every time I see him my feelings grow, and I feel so lucky to have found someone like him. I never thought he was capable of hurting me like this, and I just feel so stupid and naive for even trusting him in the first place. I never thought I could be betrayed like this in my very first relationship, and I thought my boyfriend was some innocent guy. He lives in an apartment off campus with a couple of other guys. The house is really rowdy, and they have lots of people coming in and out of it at all times. But I live with my parents, so we usually hang out at his place since we have more privacy there. The other morning when I woke up, I had my hand under the pillow and felt something soft brush my finger. I grabbed it and took a closer look. I tried to hold in a choked sob, as I realized it was another girl's false eyelash. I don't even wear freaking makeup. In that split second, I had to realize that I was not the only girl he had been having in his bed. I was not his one and only. I felt so gross and violated, and I couldn't believe I had just spent the night with a cheater. I left in a hurry before he could wake up, and I was sort of dry after he reached out that afternoon. My boyfriend keeps asking me what's wrong, and telling me just to speak to him about what is bothering me so he can fix it. I just don't know what to do. Half of me never wants to see him again, but the other half wants to just pretend like I never found it and just try and forget about the entire situation. I know I might be acting like a stupid, inexperienced child, but I'm in love, and it's totally clouding my judgment.
I found false lashes in my boyfriend's bed. But I don't wear lashes. I feel like the biggest idiot in the world, and I can't believe how bad I ended up screwing myself by being immature. After finding another girl's fake eyelash in my boyfriend's pillows, I had been distant and borderline ignoring him for almost a week. At one point, he left a voicemail crying where he was saying how much he missed me and that he was sorry for whatever he did that upset me. Towards the end of the week, his calls and texts got more desperate. Later on, he left me another voicemail saying I couldn't just leave him in limbo like this. He said I was treating him like I hated him, and if I wanted to break up, then I needed to be honest about that to him at least. I was furious to see how he was acting. I was disgusted at him trying to act innocent and play the victim. I was so upset and overwhelmed by the end of the week, but I still don't want to just straight up break up with him. Instead, I decided to send him a picture of the mystery eyelash since I had taken it the morning that I found it. He responded to the picture with a line of question marks, and I remember letting out a sarcastic laugh when I saw the notification. I sent him an angry text saying where I found the lash and calling him a cheat and a liar. I still hadn't said I wanted to break up, because I wanted to see what he would say. He left me on read for about an hour. I spent the entire time cursing him out in my head. When he did reply, he sent me a long voice memo. When I listened to it, I felt like a freaking deflated balloon. He started off by saying he would never cheat on me and that he was hurt that I jumped to that conclusion without even trying to talk to him about it first. Then he explained that he had texted the photo to his roommate group chat, and one of his ruder roommates admitted that he had a fight with his girlfriend recently and he had kicked her out of his bed and told her to go sleep in my boyfriend's room instead since he had been out that night with me. The lash turned out to be hers, and my boyfriend showed me all the screenshots from the group chat as proof. I felt like a huge idiot. I was relieved but so embarrassed with the way I acted. When I called my boyfriend after, trying to apologize for how I acted, he just said that if this is how I handled conflict in a relationship, maybe I wasn't ready for one. I literally just lost my boyfriend, my first love, because I was petty and insecure, and I've learned a harsh lesson about the importance of communication. High school students invent machine to clean ocean plastic. How did they do it? Let me tell you about the effing amazing story of these high school students who are saving the goddamn world by inventing a machine to clean up ocean plastic. Meet Boyan Slat, a 16-year-old who went on a beach trip to Greece and was shocked as F to see more plastic bags than fish in the water. This sight sparked a question in his mind: how can we possibly clean up all of this shit? Being determined as hell, Boyan began researching existing technologies that could tackle ocean plastic pollution. But he soon realized that these solutions were either too expensive or effing inefficient when it came to collecting large amounts of trash. Undeterred, Boyan took matters into his own hands. He founded the Ocean Cleanup Foundation and set out to create a device that could address this problem. The result was a revolutionary invention called a floating barrier. Leveraging the power of currents and waves, this device could passively collect plastic without requiring human intervention or costly retrieval efforts. What's more, it was designed to be durable and long-lasting as fuck. Once anchored in place, it could continue collecting trash for decades before requiring maintenance or replacement parts. The estimated cost of this ambitious project is $500 million. Holy shit. In 2013, Boyan presented his idea at a TEDx event, where he captured the attention of scientists and investors from around the world like whoa. The recognition and support he received were incredible, no doubt about it. 3 years later, Boyan's team achieved an extraordinary feat. They won first place out of 1,600 teams at an ultra-prestigious international science competition hosted by MIT. And the good news just keeps on coming, thank God. Recently, the team secured $2 million from private investors including Richard Branson himself, plus they also received $1 million from the Dutch government for further development of their groundbreaking technology. God damn it. With plans to begin testing their floating barriers next year, there is hope that full implementation will take place sometime after 2020, can you believe it? Just think about how much potential there is. Within just couple years we might witness substantial improvements in our ocean's health. Even though I'm not some science whiz, I find this story incredibly inspiring. These determined high school students are working hard AF make difference combat one biggest environmental challenges we face today with their innovative machine. They might just save our oceans from plastic pollution. What an accomplishment.
I went for a walk on this little greenway in my town. It's pretty popular here, especially since it's autumn and has a lot of nice trees to look at. I've been here a ton throughout the years, but this is the first time that I've ever had a bad interaction. Most of my walk was great, but when I was about a quarter of a mile from the parking lot, I decided to stop and take a minute to just appreciate nature and chill. It's important to note at this point nobody was behind me. I'm a fast walker and occasionally go jogging, and I get a little paranoid, so I glance back frequently. There just wasn't anybody anywhere near me when I stopped. I had earphones in both my ears, just enjoying my music. When I was ready to continue walking back to my car, I saw this man. Out of what seems like absolutely nowhere, this man passes me, and he's really weird. First off, I noticed him approaching in the corner of my eye, so I didn't get a great look, but it seems like he was initially walking very close to me or possibly walking up to me, and as I was turning back to the track it may have thrown him off. There was also plenty of room on the path, enough for multiple people to get by at once, let alone just one man. It freaks me out to think what he was possibly going to do before I threw him off by turning. I didn't bump into him or anything, though. After that he almost kind of does a spin as he's passing me and makes direct eye contact with me. If he said anything I did not hear him because of my earphones, but I was watching his face and his mouth didn't move. He then crosses himself like a Catholic after taking another look at me. Which is also really strange, and I'm not sure what that was about. I was just wearing really plain jogging clothes and I have tattoos, but nothing that I think would be alarming enough to cross yourself when you see me. He keeps staring at me, and as I'm about to take out my earphone and ask what his deal is, he keeps walking. I watch him get a good bit ahead. Before I continue. When I started walking back to the parking lot again, he noticed. He turns around, and while walking backwards, he points his fingers at me like his hand is a firearm and does a shooting motion at me multiple times, before he turns around and continues like nothing happened. I notice he has a backpack and a staff-like umbrella. He's also walking in jeans and a jacket. I get scared at the thought there might be a weapon in his bag, and he had this large umbrella with him, so I decided to just keep neutral and not antagonize the crazy man that already is threatening me. Eventually he walks off into this other area the greenway goes into, and I head straight for the parking lot and book it to my car.
What is the biggest plot twist you've seen in real life? During the last year of my grandfather's life, he had dementia and was having trouble keeping track of reality. Before he was placed into hospice, he kept complaining about a man that was in his house. He would say that the man would come around at night into the house, and that the man was taking his things and using his stuff. Grandma and Grandpa lived together still, and they didn't have a big house, so if it happened, Grandma would know. Grandma of course kept reassuring him that she was the only one there, and no one was breaking in. His doctor increased his medications because he was losing touch with reality so badly. Fast forward to my grandfather's funeral, and a man showed up. Most of us didn't know him, like I never saw him in my life. Only 2 family members recognized him. Turns out he was an old friend of my grandmother's who showed up to give his support. In a small town like that, it wasn't exactly an unusual thing to have random people show up to the funeral home who knew the person at some point. We thought it was a nice gesture, and most of us got to know him that day. Well, about a year later, my grandmother let slip that she was seeing someone. The guy from the funeral. At this point, nothing too odd. It's been a whole year, and it's nice that someone is looking out for Grandma. They got to talking at church and we thought it was sweet. Then a bit later, sweet innocent old Grandma mentions that it's their 3-year anniversary. Grandpa died 2 years prior. This man was the person that Grandpa saw in his house every night. My grandma was cheating with him while Grandpa was in his final days. He was the reason that everyone thought Grandpa was going crazy. He was the reason that my grandfather was medicated to the point of being a vegetable for the last horrible year of his life. Everyone is mad at Grandma and the guy.
I regret rejecting him, so I have a best friend who we'll call Jay, who's also my schoolmate, classmate, and we live in the same residential area. A little description on Jay: he's tall, handsome, athletic, fit, smart, funny and sweet. He even has good hair and the most beautiful eyes. Jay and I had been friends from kindergarten up till high school. When we were in primary, he confessed many times, but I only considered him a friend. I never saw him to be as handsome and amazing as everyone else did, because I saw him almost all the time of my life. About a month and a half ago, Jay once again confessed to me. This time he did it more maturely and more in a sweet way that I actually felt butterflies in my stomach, but I wasn't sure I felt the same. His confession did really make me think of it, but I really valued our friendship more, and I didn't think I felt anything for Jay, so once again I rejected him in a way I regret to this day. I laughed and said, "So I'm still your little obsession. Grow up and move on already, Jay." His face after I said that made me regret my words. He didn't laugh like I did. It seemed like he was fighting back tears. I honestly didn't think he was being 100% serious, because he would always say how he will confess 100 times a week to wait for me to say yes. Jay just walked away and left. He didn't come to school the next day. He didn't come outside when I went to call him to walk together to school. He ignored my calls and texts, and when he did see them, he never responded. At first I was angry at him. Why was he taking rejection so seriously? I already rejected him enough times for him to get used to it. That's what I thought then. But the more I didn't get the notification of his text, his random FaceTimes, the goofy TikToks he'd send me, the more I didn't get to see his name pop up on my notifications. I felt bad. I had made so many tries to text him when I finally sent him an apology of a paragraph, but it was then I found out. He blocked me. He came back to school after missing 2.5 weeks out. Those 2.5 weeks I thought of him always. Our desks were together, so I'd zone out while staring at his desk. One of my friends even told me I might have fallen for Jay, but I denied it. I denied it until I saw him when he came back. Jay looked like a whole different person. He had dyed his blonde hair jet black and had gotten an amazing haircut. His aura completely changed as soon as he entered the class. Everyone looked at him and I did too. He sat down at his desk and didn't even turn to look at me. Everyone came and showered him with compliments about his good haircut, and he suddenly had the most charming smile as he thanked everyone. Well, everyone but me. I turned to him with a happy smile and said, "Black hair really suits you well. You look so handsome." But he ignored me and continued to speak to this other guy who even stopped talking so Jay would react my comment, but nothing. He ignored me the whole morning, and when our homeroom teacher came he asked to switch seats but was denied. He ignored me and hang out with the people he knew I didn't like. He'd always walk away when I tried to talk to him. I had actually come to accept that I liked him back. I even asked my friends and my sister and even my mom if feeling certain ways after he left meant I liked him, and my mom said, maybe he just needed to leave for you to realize how much you care for him, and my friends and sister said the same. I decided to go and tell him the day after he returned. I didn't get the chance in the morning because he went to his new friends, and when I tried to talk to him he went away. I felt so bad that I went crying in the girls' bathroom. I regretted it. I regretted it so much. I wished I had just accepted his feelings then and tried to see if I'd fall for him with time. I shouldn't have waited this long. He ignored me completely and acted like we were never even friends for the rest of the days that followed. I had enough of it though. Since he had me blocked everywhere, I took my sister's phone and sent him a long message confessing my feelings, apologizing and asking him if we could be friends again and telling him how much I missed him. I begged him to talk to me and really hoped he would see it. Now I'm waiting for his reply. I feel so distressed I want to cry. I feel anxious. I feel like he'll make fun of me, or reject me, even worse, but I'm ready for any response as long as he talks to me and reads my message. I don't care if he hates me now. I know I made him angry and I want to fix it. I feel sorry for how mean I rejected him too. Sorry for my rant.
Teachers, what is the most embarrassing thing you've done or seen while teaching? I was a lifeguard when I was in high school, and all sophomores have to take swimming lessons. However, they need lifeguards to be present during the classes. In junior year I was asked if I could be a lifeguard during my physical education class, and I thought hell yes. I have to get out of the gym. So the swimming class during my period of physical education was mentally challenged kids, and I basically had to give them swimming lessons. No problem. I've done that 1,000 times. There was this one kid, Jimmy. Jimmy loved me. He was always by my side and did not understand the need for personal space. So when he wanted to touch my face he did. Which for whatever reason he loved my face. I mostly didn't mind. Until he found out about stroking it. So he would play with his thingy all day and try to touch my face, and I'm like, Jimmy no. Jimmy no. Constantly. Well, Jimmy was touching himself, and as I'm trying to tell him we don't do that in the pool, he finishes. In the friggin' pool. And starts chasing me cause he wants to touch my face. I am swimming frantically away from Jimmy's hands while I yelled for male PE teacher to take care of him. We had to drain the pool, and he got a lecture that you only go to town on yourself off in the shower in your bedroom. Have you ever met an inmate that was actually a very nice person but did absolutely horrifying crimes? I was about 6 years into a 10.5-year minimum. I was transferred to SCI Huntington in Pennsylvania. This was a very old penitentiary, surrounded by a wall with blocks that were 3 and 4 tiers high. Even the top tiers only had a normal size handrail. Needless to say, many people attempted to fly with some ugly results. This prison was known as the last stop in PA. If you broke the rules in other prisons or happened to find yourself fighting too often, chances are you ended up in Huntington. I could write an entire novel about the characters that I came to know here, but I will just try and answer this question. Living on my block, on the bottom tier, this happened to be my tier, was a baby-faced kid. I mean, he looked like he was not even old enough to be with us. I looked at his prison number, which is printed on all of our clothes. This is the quickest way to see if a guy is a new fish or if he has an old number. This very young-looking kid had the same letters that I had, which meant he came into the state system around the same year I did, so about 6 or 7 years ago. Turns out he was certified as an adult at 14 years old. This happens pretty often these days, but back in the 90s, this was a rare event. I noticed right away that none of the chicken hawks seemed to be pushing up on this kid. Chicken hawks are sexual predators who try to befriend young kids in the penitentiary. They pretend they are looking out for the kid, but, in reality, they are trying to turn the kid into a punk. They try to move the kid into their cell, and, from there, I am sure you can use your imagination. Back to the story. As I said, he was not being bothered by these guys, and he was not really affiliated with anyone. In Pennsylvania, it is not mandatory to pick a car to ride with. I mean, it pays to stick with your own kind, and you will usually fall in with a group, but people can and do serve sentences without joining a gang. It can lead you into some difficult situations if you don't have people to watch your back, but that is another story. My first few months were spent sorting out my role in the place. I am one of those guys who likes to remain under the radar. I guess I have earned respect because of some things I had done in the other institution, but my hobby was watching other people. I have always been fascinated by human behavior, so I never forgot about this kid. In fact, we played softball on the same team. I began to ask for information about the kid. Even though I was in a position to just pull the kid aside and ask him directly, it is always better to find out the background some other way, then you don't put the person in an awkward situation. Does he feel that he can just tell me the truth? Or will he feel like he has to put on a facade? Etc. Anyway, the kid was always looking for pets. He found a little baby rabbit in the yard where we played softball. He kept it in his cell for over a month until a guard saw it during cell searches. This was like the nicest kid. He never had a bad word to say about anybody. He always tried to make people happy. Now, by this time, I know the kid is 30 to 60 years. As I said, to receive a sentence like this at 14 was a rare thing back then. Okay, he killed someone, no big deal. 1 out of 4 guys in the jail were lifers. Many killers here. Then I heard his sister was 12 years old and mentally retarded. 2 high school kids from his town gave his 12-year-old sister alcohol and raped her and left her naked on the street. She told him who they were. He did not say a word to his family. He took off with a shotgun on his bicycle. He found the 2 guys playing pinball at the corner store. He walked in and made them kneel on the floor. He put the gun in the first kid's mouth and pulled the trigger. The second kid just passed out from fear or stress and he shot him too. As always, I never keep track of the characters I knew. I will bet money that if or when they parole this kid, he will never commit another crime, as long as no one ever hurts his family again.
My racist mother-in-law thinks that Indians are dangerous and called me a redskin beach. Now, she's asking for forgiveness. My husband's family is very small. His parents are the stereotypical white conservative small-town Christians. Mother-in-law stays at home and tends to the house while father-in-law works. I was worried about his parents' beliefs at first as I practice my native tribe's spiritual beliefs. I'm very left-leaning socially and politically, don't dress very conventional, and my husband and I have no desire to have children. But they were pretty chill with me when I met them the first time. His dad I have had no problems with, but over time, I have begun having trouble with his mother. She just flat out doesn't like me. According to my father-in-law, she has said I'm not the kind of woman that needs to be with her son. Her reasoning is because I don't act like a woman, I won't be a housewife, and I have a man's job. I'm a flight paramedic for a service that airlifts critically unstable patients. I love my job and I love being a paramedic. My husband has never expressed that he wants me to be a housewife or take up a stereotypically feminine job. If he did, we wouldn't be together. But apparently, that's what his mother thinks he needs. When I first met his parents, we had been dating for about 5 months. Mother-in-law said at first that I didn't look like the kind of woman my husband would bring home. I didn't take it to heart, I figured she didn't mean it in a harsh way. When they asked what I did for work, I told them I was a flight medic. Father-in-law said that was awesome, while mother-in-law just kind of frowned and didn't say anything. She was pretty cordial in the beginning, but as my husband and I got more and more serious, she began to not like me more. It started with snide comments. She would manage to sneak into conversations about the fact that she thinks women should be homemakers, or have jobs like teachers or caretakers. When started working 48-hour shifts, she asked who was going to take care of the housework. My husband told her he would while I was gone those 2 days. She got upset and said it wasn't fair that I made her son do it all by himself while I left. My husband told her that we split household chores evenly and that it was fine. One day we were over and she went off on this rant about how she missed when women acted like women and men acted like men. She started talking about how women needed to start being housewives and mothers again while the men worked and provided. While she never directly said it, I knew she included me in that. Father-in-law told her to calm down and that this wasn't the time for that kind of discussion, and she got mad and said, "Well, it's just the truth," and looked in my direction. I'm not an idiot. I knew this rant was just a way for her to tell me how she felt without directly telling me. My husband was pretty angry when we left, and I can't say I was too pleased. I told him she was allowed to have her opinion no matter how stupid it was, and I wasn't going to lose sleep over the fact that she seems to still be living in the 1950s. He said he was angry about the blatant disrespect. He talked to her about it and said she wouldn't do it again. So I managed to let that situation roll off my shoulders. Everything came to a head with her a few weeks ago. Father-in-law invited us over for dinner, so we went. My cousin is getting married in a few months, and my husband mentioned that we were going to the wedding. It will be a traditional wedding by our tribe's customs. Father-in-law said that was cool, and mother-in-law asked if there was going to be alcohol there. I didn't see how that was an issue, so I said yes. She responded with, "Son, you don't need to be around all that drinking." My husband said it was fine and that it wouldn't be a problem. She said, "No, you don't need to go, it's not safe if there's going to be alcohol there." I said, "Why wouldn't it be safe? It's not like we're going to be at a bar. It's just gonna be my family." She then said, "Well, some people can get violent when they drink." I knew exactly what some people meant and that this was a racist remark. I told her that no one would be getting violent and that everyone would have a designated driver. My husband then said that we were going and there wasn't going to be any negotiation about it because he was a grown man and could make decisions for himself. That just made her more upset, and she started going off about how it wasn't a good idea for him to be around a bunch of drunk people. After father-in-law told her to calm, my husband asked why it mattered so much to her anyway, because it was not like we were forcing her to go with us. She then said, "I just don't think it's a good idea for you to be around a bunch of drunk Indians." I was in shock. I knew this is what she meant, but I didn't think she had the balls to flat out say it. "You can't be serious," I said. She proceeded to tell me, "I am serious. I know how you people are and I don't want my son around it." My husband began to lose it and started yelling at her. I honestly didn't have a response to that. I was just dumbfounded, as was my father-in-law. My husband told her he would not stand for her blatant disrespect and hatefulness any longer and was not going to allow her to be racist towards me. She then said, "I can't believe you're seriously choosing this red-skin beach over your own mother. I gave birth to you." I told her to go F herself and left out the front door, with my husband following me. She came running out the door after him, begging him not to leave. He then told her, "No, F you, you're dead to me and I never want to hear from or see you again." He was shaking with anger when he got in the car and told me he was done with her and her bullshit and that we wouldn't be going back over there. Ever since then, she has been blowing up our phones saying she's sorry and begging to reconcile, but my husband and I both blocked her.
My little sister and I saw a bloody ghost in our basement and our mom says it's real. My wife saw it too. I grew up in an old Victorian home built in the early 1800s, so we've had our fair share of weird SHT go down, but nothing compares to what me and my sister saw when we were kids. We usually never went to the basement because everyone agreed it was crazy spooky down there, but my sister and I had to go down to grab something one day. As soon as we went down there, a chill went down my spine, and I could tell it was the same for my sister. The lights weren't working either, so it was pretty dim, but I could see a little. I turned around, and when I saw it I almost SHT my pants. I remember it so clearly to this day. Right in the corner in the shadows was this tall man covered in blood with his eyes gouged out. I think I froze because I wasn't sure if what I was seeing was even real. If you've ever seen any horror movie, this felt even worse than that. Totally soaked in blood like that movie Carrie, with his eye sockets totally empty and his gaping mouth full of maggots. I have never whimpered like that before, but I was scared SHless. I turned around to see if my sister was seeing the same thing as me, and when I looked at her I knew she was just as terrified as me. I was on the verge of asking her if she thought it maybe was an animatronic, but then it moved and I swear to God I think I jumped out of my skin and we just ran full sprint for the stairs. My sister was screaming at the top of her lungs in fear. It was like when you're having a nightmare and you just can't run away fast enough. Me and my sister both agree that we even heard the ghost running after us. My sister slammed the door and we both whipped around expecting to see the monster, but it wasn't there. We had this moment where we looked at each other and immediately started screaming for Mom. I really don't know how she even understood us because we were both talking over each other and freaking out. But eventually we got it out and told her what we saw. I was honestly just expecting her to say, "Ha ha, you guys must have just been imagining it." But what she said instead was probably worse. She turned white. I mean white like her mouth fell open, and we could tell she knew exactly how we felt. "I can't believe you saw it too," she said, and she was about to start crying too. She said, "I saw it last week and I've been too scared to go down there ever since. That's why I sent you kids down, I'm so sorry." She grabbed us and she felt so bad for sending us to the monster. Anyway, me and my sister didn't go down to the basement for about 10 years. Like, of course we didn't. If you saw something that was a more horrifying combination of Freddy Krueger and a zombie, you wouldn't go down there for $1 million. When we grew up though, obviously we didn't think it was real. I guess when your grown-up brain kicks and you just blaze past those kind of hidden memories. What was effed up was that this week my wife and I were having dinner with my family, and my sister and I were telling the story and laughing about it. My wife didn't think it was funny though. She went all white just like my mom did that day. She could have been making the exact same face for all I remember. But when she said she saw it too, we all went dead silent. My dad had sent her down there for candles earlier. She came back acting weird, but she didn't say anything. We told her to describe the ghost and it was exactly what we remembered. We really didn't know what to do after that, knowing the ghost is probably real. My dad joked about boarding up the basement, but in all honesty I think we should just move. What's the most embarrassing favor you've had to ask? I had been to an all-girls school till I was in the 8th grade. The next year my parents decided to move to take care of my ailing maternal grandfather. I was put in a co-ed school and for the first time in my life talked and sat with boys around me. So I was this awkward, scared girl in the threshold of adolescence who even liked boys as well as hated them. Cut to a few months into the school and I went to the washroom in the middle of class. I reached the washroom to find myself in period and a big blotch of stain on my underwear. Just to the cream-colored skirt. The stain had made its way to my skirt as I examined it. The blood spread into the skirt and I stood there not moving an inch. Maybe this wouldn't be a big deal for a 14-year-old now, but this was back in 2001 and I was in a panic. In the previous school I just had to walk to the office and ask for the pad. Since everyone was female I never faced any problem. But now? I couldn't do that. I stayed inside the washroom for a good 5 minutes wondering what to do. I peeped outside in the hope to find some girl from whom I could ask for a pad, then maybe an extra pair of pants or a skirt from the school office. Or maybe ask the office lady to call my mom. I was standing there for more than 10 minutes now and I knew the class teacher would get annoyed at a student missing class for so long. The washroom was in the small alley where there was a girls' washroom on one side and the boys' one on the other. A few agonizing minutes passed by and I hear the period bell ring. There was a hustle but no kids coming near the washroom. How come no one wants to pee? I wondered. Aren't you all drinking water? My anxiety was building up. Then a classmate of mine came singing into the alley. It was Chase. Chase was a bit of a troublemaker, which made him a popular crush amongst the girls in the school. I for one wished it would have been someone else. He let out a loud fart along the way, assuming nobody was watching him. He looked at me and paused. I hid behind the door. "What happened?" he asked. "Can you call some girl?" I muttered after he asked me for the 3rd time. "Everyone is in the science lab. I can't go in because I didn't do the homework." "Have you done yours?" he asked. "Great. I didn't do the homework, plus I was bleeding here with nobody to help. How screwed can I get?" I replied, "No. But I can handle a scolding. But right now I want you to call some girl." "What is it? Can't you tell me?" "Come out." "I can't." Please." For a convent girl who promised to stay away from boys, especially boys like Chase, this was way out of line. "Oh." He understood. "You need that?" "What?" he asked desperately, half of me horrified he might know, the other half hoping he would be able to help. "You know, that," he said, rolling his eyes. As if that was a hint. "Yes," I said, thinking he meant what I thought he meant. "Okay, I have one." I looked at him puzzled. Didn't my mom tell me only women get periods? Or did I assume that? I wondered. It had been just a few months since I had started getting my periods. He took out a safety pin and gave it to me. "What do I do with this?" I asked. Now he looked at me puzzled. "Pin this to that area." "Can we do that?" I stood there without a reaction. I didn't know how to react. "What?" I asked, bewildered. "Your skirt tore, right?" The mystery solved. My mind and my thumping heart finally rested. "No," I said. "You call a safety pin that?" This boy was clueless. I didn't know how to say it without you being embarrassed. "I don't need a safety pin. Please call some girl. I can't stand here any longer." This time his eyes went wide. "Oh, Now I get it. Oh, this is more embarrassing. I will call someone. He turned around and paused. He turned back to me. But I can't go in the lab. You know, what do I do? I almost went into a crime mode. Wait, don't worry, I have an idea. He hurried off assuring me he would be back soon. He went to the office and asked for a band-aid. The office lady gave him the first aid box and went back to writing something in the register. He quietly took out a pad and along with a band-aid and gave the box back. He came running towards me in less than 2 minutes. Here, he said, handing me the pad with trembling hands. Why are you shaking? I asked. Completely serious. He looked me in the eye and said I have never held one of them before, just seen eminence. I thanked him and he smiled. I was about to go back into the bathroom when he stopped me. Wait. Take this, he said and gave me a sweater. This is for that. He trailed off. Him and his that. Thanks, I said. I went in and did the knee full. Came out to see him standing near the alley. I promise I will not tell this to anyone, he said. Thank you, I said and started walking. He accompanied me back to class. I couldn't stop thinking about how unexpectedly nice and kind Chase was. We've now been married for over 10 years and he still uses the word that more than he should. My ex-husband who cheated on me with my sister emailed me after 6 years. I, 33, met my ex-husband, Dan, 40, almost 15 years ago at a restaurant when I was celebrating my 18th birthday. He was really nice, charming and mature. He made me feel loved and special. For some context, I grew up in a dysfunctional family. My mom and dad used to always fight. My dad would sometimes go out and not come back for months. He died when my sister Abby, 25, was born. My mom was way too fond of Abby since her birth rather than me. Abby was basically babied by my mother. She didn't neglect me at all, always did her best as a mother and provided for me, but I always felt some time missing. After Dan came to my life I didn't feel like there was something missing from me. He supported me, he was caring. He would always buy me gifts and take me out on long drives. I felt complete when I was with him. We got married after dating for 4 years. I wanted to start a family right away, but Dan encouraged me to do my master's and helped me build my career. He wanted us to be in a stable position financially before we start thinking about having kids. Seriously, he was the best guy I could ever ask for. After 5 years of being happily married, I discovered that my husband was cheating on me with Abby. I discovered the affair when my husband made an excuse that he will go out of town for a week, but he stayed in town and he booked a hotel room where he and Abby can have intimacy. This has been going on for 6 months behind my back. I was really devastated. Abby and I were close growing up. I loved her and cared for her. How could she do this to me? After the D-Day, Dan and I had a fight. I asked how could he do this to me? That too with my sister who just turned 19? He said he didn't love me anymore, that I don't give him enough attention, that I am not the same girl he fell in love with. Between this mess, I discovered that I was pregnant. But due to the stress, I lost the baby. He didn't even care enough to visit me at the hospital when I lost our child. He was having a weekend getaway with my sister. I should have seen the signs. Abby would always be touchy with Dan. Dan would sometimes stare at her. But it is still very disturbing for me. My mother as usual took Abby's side and told me to just make peace with it. I wanted to unalive myself because I had no one left. Lost my child and my husband, my whole family. Then my best friend Tina, my savior, came to my rescue. She was moving to another state and asked me to come with her. I said yes. I was already divorced at that point and we lived in a small town. So, I would obviously run into my ex and my sister. It took me a while to settle into my new life in a different state, but I met some kind people there. It helped me heal some trauma. I still have trust issues. I met my now husband Tony, 32, after 1 year of moving to the new place. I was really hesitant and kept my guard up, but he showed me that he is trustworthy and loves me a lot. I was so happy with him that I almost forgot about the life I had back in my hometown. His parents were really welcoming and generous people. We got married a year ago. I am now pregnant with our first child. Yesterday, I got an email from my ex Dan. It just brought back all the bad memories. I am just paraphrasing his email. He mentioned that he misses me. He tried to find me but couldn't. He is very miserable with my sister. She is very dumb and doesn't care about him like I do. I used to bake him a cake and throw birthdays for him. But Abby only texted him happy birthday and didn't even bother to buy him a cake. Plus she is very rude. She doesn't respect him. She is always at the bar with her friends. He also mentioned that she has cheated on him 5 times already. The last affair was with his cousin. Our mother also doesn't stop her. He will soon file for a divorce, but lately he has been missing me a lot. He wants us to try again as a couple. He wants us to become a family just like before. Since I do not have social media except for Instagram, which is private, he probably doesn't know that I am married and I have a baby on the way. I don't know if I should feel pity for him or just laugh because the grass on his side is very brown rather than green.
Entitled kid threw a tantrum after we gifted him a car, so I took it back. He protested, but I told him I will never spend any money on a brat. So our brother married a woman who already had kids. The only reason I'm bringing this up is because it's a major part of the incident. Our brother and his wife are not as well off as the rest of us. One of their kids will turn 16 in a few months, and as they can't afford to buy them a car, the rest of the siblings decided to pitch in and buy them a car. It's a tradition that every kid in our family gets one at 16. We also decided to roll the birthday and Christmas gift into one. They gave me the money and it was my job to buy the car. Also, we decided to get a used car and give them money to cover the insurance for a couple of years instead of getting a new car. I found a good deal on a 3-year-old car in great condition and with low miles. Christmas rolls around and what should have been a great time turned into crap. Basically, the kid threw a tantrum because they got a used car instead of a new one like the rest of the cousins. To be fair, the rest of the cousins who turned 16 got new cars, but that was because their parents could afford it and no one had to pitch it. Our brother was extremely humble and grateful, but his wife joined the kid in the tantrum, calling out the unequal treatment. They continued even after I told them the car comes with cash to pay for the first 2 years' insurance. It turned the rest of the holiday for our parents into a big fight interrupted by awkward silence. Finally, I had enough and unilaterally told them that the kid will get nothing, that I'm going to sell the car and give our siblings back their money. Even though I made the decision in anger and without discussion, all of the siblings agree with me. However, my parents, the kid, and our brother's wife vehemently disagree and say I can't take back a present. She's accusing me of treating her kid differently because they're not blood related, and I've been posting it on her social media. Our parents were embarrassed and said they would chip in for me to sell this car and get a new one to match the rest of the cousins. I refused and said I will never spend any money on those brats again.
What are the most common mistakes people make when they have guests over for dinner? Once, I was invited to dinner. The couple had a baby, so I didn't expect them to cook a storm. Surprisingly, they ordered food via Uber a few minutes before I reached. This made me realize the importance of my mother's advice to never skip breakfast before leaving home. Unfortunately, I left the house without eating anything except a cup of chai. We waited almost an hour before the food arrived, and the small plastic bag it came in was a red flag. The four of us split a half chicken, some slices of bread, pickles, and yogurt dressing. I was surprised that the couple didn't order enough food, as I know how much they enjoy eating. Luckily, we were near a hub of restaurants, so we went out for a big cone of ice cream after leaving their home. So, if you're inviting someone home, order plenty of food. More is be Herrerian under ordering. Here are a few mistakes to avoid and leave a good impression on guests. Cleaning your dishes in front of them. Turn on the TV unless you've invited them to watch a match. Forcing them to play board games or drinking alcohol. Leaving your regular hand towels. My best friend said he can't keep his girl in line, so I overcharged his misogynistic aunt to loyalty test her. My best friends don't even trust me around their girlfriends because of my unspoken aura. If you ever had trouble picking up girls, it's probably because you don't have the magic touch. There are guys who crumble at the feet of women just to get a crumb of coochie, but there's a secret subcategory of men that never beg. These men are the Bruce Wayne type. Their rule is to never approach any women, and I can confirm that I've never had to. Women simply gravitate towards me just as I am. I will say, I never leave my house disheveled, and I do keep up my appearances, but so do 98% of other guys. If you're part of that 2% and you complain about women, check yourself. Still, women just come to me naturally because of my aura and appearance. My best friends are always hesitant to introduce me to their girlfriends. When they do introduce me for the first time, the next night they'll text me on a secret Insta account wanting to link up. And each time I have to break my boys' hearts. I'd never go behind their backs though. Eventually word got out amongst my different friend groups that I'm the, and I quote, perfect loyalty test guy. At first I was doing it for free for my friends, but when people started hitting me up on Discord, Insta, and WhatsApp, I decided to start making money off of it, cause rent is due. I started making videos of loyalty testing girls, and I make money off that on top of the flat base rate I charge my clients. Eventually things got way too out of hand, and I almost got outsmarted. This guy texted me saying he wanted to propose to his girlfriend, but he had a gut feeling that she was entertaining other guys because she took days to respond, and her friends always posted pictures of them at clubs with a bunch of random guys. I told him I'd do it and asked for her Instagram, and once I got the deposit, I got right to work. The girl's Instagram page had a little over 2,000 followers, had lots of pictures of her going out to bars, the beach, and pictures of her modeling really tight dresses and cleavage-heavy shirts. I followed her and liked her recent posts. In just a few minutes she started liking my pictures and followed me back. I knew that was my cue to slide into her DMs. I really didn't know how to text, so I made sure to have Pickup Pal AI open to help me. I told her that she's beautiful and she quickly responded with,
Thank you, so are you.
I asked her where she was from, and she said LA, then asked me the same question. I told her I live in Nevada and asked if she had ever visited. She said,
No, I haven't. Do you think I should visit sometime?
I said, yes, you'll get to see the deserts, the Vegas Strip, and me. Her response to this actually shocked me, because she cut to the chase. I guess it really confirmed the boyfriend's suspicions about her throwing herself at every guy who looked her way. She told me,
Booking my flight right now.
At that point I knew I had caught her, but that wasn't enough proof. In order for her to fully fail the loyalty test, I would have to get her number. She then asked me why I started liking her pictures all of a sudden. I couldn't tell her that it was a way to get her attention because her boyfriend asked me to, and honestly no girl I've texted has ever questioned why I was in their DMs. I couldn't think of a way to respond on the spot, so I went on Pickup Pal AI to come up with a casual response that wouldn't set off any red flags in her brain. I told her what the AI had generated, which was that she had come up on my feed, and I got carried away looking at her pictures because she was so gorgeous. She seemed to fall for it, because she liked my message and said I was making her blush. I told her I could do a lot more than that. She asked me,
What else would you do?
and the clear response here was telling her I'd take her on dates, and spoil her. She asked me where I would take her, so I asked for her interests so that I could plan this out well. She told me she liked sightseeing, animals, and the water. From her responses, I couldn't think of anything besides going to the beach or zoo, but that seemed too basic and I wanted to really impress her. I went back on Pickup Pal AI and put her interests along with location onto the date generator. I scrolled for a little bit and found something I knew she might like. I texted her back, I'll take you to Echo Park Lake, which was a romantic swan boat ride around a lake. She hearted the message and told me she's always wanted to go there, but never had anyone to go with. She said she'd be happy to go there with me. What she did next shocked me to my core. She sent me her phone number. Usually I had to ask for it, so she must have really enjoyed our conversation. She told me to text her on iMessage from now on. along with a kiss emoji. She sent me a picture of herself, saying to use that for her contact picture, and then asked me to send one. I gave Pickup Pal AI 5 of my pictures and it chose the best one, so I sent that over to her. She sent me heart eye emojis and called me handsome. She failed bad, and I made sure to let her boyfriend know. I sent him screenshots of everything and asked if I should keep going or not. He laughed at my messages but said he was glad he trusted his gut because he didn't want to get married to a cheater. He told me I could stop there, but I didn't stop there. I had to see this through to the end because this is my job, and I take it very seriously. I wanted to see how far she would take this, so I texted her on iMessage and,
Should I be mad at my boyfriend for having a Grindr account? Me and my boyfriend have been dating for 4 years now and I thought everything was good because our relationship has been great, but earlier today I woke up at 6 a.m. to my boyfriend acting weird on his phone, so I got up and I saw the app. He said that it was going to be a surprise because he had gotten us a threesome. I was really uncomfortable with the idea. He also told me that he sent pictures of me to the third person he was trying to add to our relationship. I felt so uncomfortable as he was telling me that they were arranging the cost of the hotel and bottles. So I guess my question is, would you guys be mad or am I overreacting? Also, should I believe he was actually planning that or should I be worried about him cheating? Update. I see a lot of people wondering if I'm male or I am a F. The topic about the threesome has never came up, so this was out of the blue. I was blindsided in all of this and that's why I was uncomfortable with this whole thing. Not only that, but something like that should be talked about and looked at together, not just throw it onto someone. I asked to see the messages and he wouldn't let me see. I tried taking the phone from him, but before I could even get a hold of his phone the app was deleted. When I pressed him more about it, he logged in and all the messages from there deleted, so I couldn't even see the conversation, so at this point I'm just going off what he's telling me. I tried breaking up with him but he wouldn't let me, saying that he begged God for me and now that he has me he doesn't want to lose me. This morning I woke up and there was flowers with a long note apologizing.
I slept with my brother. Help me. Okay, so there is a backstory to this. In high school I was very insecure about my gender and sexuality. So when I got to college I really explored cross-dressing and makeup because I was always scared to do so at home. By the end of my first semester I got really good at makeup and got very fit, and I finally got the courage to take pictures of myself. I went on Tinder where I could swipe on both men and women, and I noticed only men swiped with me. I liked that they showered me with compliments and wanted me physically, but I didn't really find them attractive. So I eventually went on Grindr and matched with a guy that was fit and I found half attractive. He made me get butterflies when texting and we finally agreed to hook up. It was purely a sexual relationship. I did not want to be out and he wanted to be discreet, so we were sex partners for 3 semesters before he graduated. After we were no longer a thing, I really didn't want to pursue men anymore because I really didn't like them to begin with, and although I find it fun to cross-dress, I realize now that I just really find women beautiful and wanted to feel wanted and crushed on like I have for the girls I like. So last summer I got really into lifting, put on newbie muscle gains and joined a fraternity in the fall. Through that I have made some good fraternity friends and friends of women in sororities. This was really good for me as it forced me to interact with women, which I was kind of scared to do. But it has been great because I actually get along great with women and have surprisingly a lot in common with many of my girlfriends. Then I met this girl who transferred from a different college, that she didn't do academically well at, and is turning things around now. We clicked instantly, and what I liked about her is she didn't take any BS and she was upfront about how she liked me and wanted to take me out. I have gotten that same feeling of being wanted from her, that I got from men. So at the end of this past fall semester we went on a couple dates and picked things back up in the spring. Now my current dilemma: I found in the middle of spring semester that her brother is the guy I was hooking up with my freshman and sophomore year. The week after the 4th of July I am supposed to meet her and her family in their 2-week vacation at their summer cabin, and I am literally sick to my stomach. I finally have figured out what a panic attack is and have thrown up multiple times just thinking about it. I honestly have no idea if he has realized who I am, as I was always in makeup and cross-dressed, but I am absolutely terrified. I told my girlfriend I loved her this past semester and we have already kind of made plans together post-college. I feel like I am trapped and I am not sleeping well and having panic attacks. I worry I will lose everything because I was stupid and immature and insecure about myself. If anyone finds out about me cross-dressing or hooking up with her brother, I might have to just end it. I really don't know what to do and I am terrified. Edit. I guess it will make you all happy to know that I dumped her. Bet you are all just so happy that my life is ruined and will be single forever. My roommate's boyfriend has been taking pictures of me without my consent. I, 24, found myself trapped in a nightmare when my roommate's boyfriend crossed all boundaries by invading my privacy and violating my trust. Determined to put an end to his creepy behavior, I confronted him, but the fallout was far more intense than I anticipated. My roommate, Sarah, 24, had been dating a guy named Mark for several years. They recently got engaged and are to be married in the next year or two. However, it is only Sarah and myself on the lease, and her boyfriend Mark occasionally visits, as does my own boyfriend, Jake. One day I was walking around our apartment when I noticed Mark, who was sitting on the couch near me, had his camera pointed towards me. He was taking a picture of me by the way the phone was held. I walked up to him and snatched his phone, only to see that he had sent a candid picture of me with my back turned zoomed on my backside to some sort of boys group chat. I was livid and demanded to see if there were any other pictures of me on this group chat. Mark got all defensive and tried to snatch his phone back, but I had already clicked in the shared media section of the group chat and was shocked to see an album's worth of pictures of both me and many other girls. All of them candid pictures taken without the girl's consent. He begged me not to tell my roommate and tried to guilt trip me into believing I was going to ruin their relationship and engagement. I threw the phone back at him and went into my room and locked it. I called my boyfriend to tell him about the incident and he was furious. He doesn't want Mark coming around anymore and I don't either. I decided to tell Sarah yesterday. I shared the disturbing truth about her boyfriend's actions. To my shock, she defended him, accusing me of overreacting and causing unnecessary drama. She claimed that I must have provoked him or misinterpreted the situation. She defended Mark and accused me of trying to sabotage their relationship out of jealousy. I am considering moving out as soon as I can. My boyfriend told me I can go and stay with him, and I am making arrangements to do so ASAP. Now I'm left questioning myself, am I the jerk for confronting my roommate's creepy boyfriend after discovering he took inappropriate pictures of me?
My parents abandoned me when I was 4, now they want me back. I, 17 female, have lived with my aunt and my uncle since my mother and my father left me there when I was 4. For this story I'll need to go back in time. I was born an only child up until my little sister Evie was born. The thing about Evie is that she was a high risk of not surviving birth, and when she did, the doctors told our parents that she was most likely not going to live past 2. Well, she did. Evie was very hard to take care of, and even harder to take care for both of us. Well, after 2 years of being parents to both of us, they just gave up on me. They brought me to my aunt and uncle's house and never picked me up again. Well, I had no idea what happened, it was just one sleepover that turned into way more. When I was 10 they finally let me in on why I had been there for the past 6 years. To say I was pissed was an understatement. I was livid, I punched the walls and I cut up my only picture with my mother and father. I promised myself that I will never speak to them again. That's when I started calling my aunt and uncle, mom and dad. I still do, I just thought it would be easier for you to read if I just addressed them as my aunt and uncle. I saw my parents briefly a couple of times throughout the years but I never talked to them. Well, yesterday I saw my parents and little sister come over to our house with a gift. Long story short, since my sister lived to 15, they weren't worried anymore and wanted me back like the old times. I told them to go F themselves and my real parents were in the kitchen. My dad just got pissed and yelled at me, saying how dare I talk to my parents like that. I told them they stopped being my parents when they left me at my aunt and uncle's house, and I'd like it to stay that way. My mom just cried and said she was so sorry but she couldn't take care of me. I just laughed and said obviously. A lot of other things were said but I think you can get the idea of what awful stuff me and my dad said to each other. But in the end they left sobbing. My aunt and uncle didn't know what happened so I told them. They said they were happy I wouldn't be leaving them, but they thought I should have let them down slowly. I think I handled it perfectly. I just wanted to get this off my chest.
Please Lord accept her into your arms, for a skinwalker she is not. As a kid the only family I ever knew was my father. My father was a man of God, or so he'd like me to have believed. But why would a man of God never step foot in a church? Why would a man of God never have me baptized? And yet every night, religiously, he would sit me down before dinner and we would pray together. Our Father, who art in heaven. And then it would almost always turn to the same two things. My father, his hands clasped tightly and his eyelids squeezed shut, would beg between grinding teeth, please Lord, please accept her into your arms. Sometimes a tear might fall, but he would always then look at me. And watch over my boy. My father's ashamed face filled my mind as I turned off the highway and onto the little farm road. I know I have made a mistake, Lord. Forgive me. His words echo in my ears as I pass by rows of cornfields. Where is Mom? I must have asked that question 1,000 times as I grew. But the answer eluded me. Instead of answering he would turn to the bottle. The door to my father's bedroom was always locked, but one Saturday night he drank the bottle from almost cap to bottom. Sunday morning I found him curled up next to his bed, a cross gripped tightly in his hands. It was the first time I'd ever been in his room. It had been drowned with religious doctrine, pages of the New Testament were even hanging from the ceiling. The pages grew more frequent as I neared a pale cabinet in the corner of the room. The memory faded from my mind briefly as I reached the spot in the tree line that had to be the entrance and parked my car on the shoulder. The cabinet was so covered in pages that I could barely see any wood at all. I pulled one page off and jumped back in surprise. The cabinet was made of white bone. And it looked ancient. I hesitantly reached for the black iron handle. A cold hand fell on my shoulder. I recoiled and found myself face to face with my father, his eyes bloodshot and crusty drool dripping from his chapped lips.
I'm sorry, I started to stammer.
That was hers, he whispered to me. Mom? I breathed. My father didn't respond, instead he gazed at the cabinet and a curtain of darkness fell over his eyes. Then he turned back to me and spoke. Don't call her that again. His words chilled my spine as I began walking the forest trail. He was never the same after that night. After the cabinet incident, my father began to scream at night. It was usually wordless, but sometimes I could make out the same two words. Forgive me. Any attempt to comfort him was dashed, because at that point, he couldn't bear to look at me and I didn't know why. Other people had no issue looking at me. Except the one time I went to church, I'll never forget that. I was about 16 and the second I entered I felt unwelcome, which from what I'd been led to believe, was not supposed to be the right reaction. Eyes glanced at me quickly and then looked away, hushed voices whispered, and I found myself in the only empty pew. I was an alien there. I left shortly after. When I was 17, my father, in an intoxicated panic, carried my mother's cabinet out onto the yard, drenched it in lighter fluid and set it on fire. He broke down weeping next to it and when the police arrived, he was inconsolable. Only one thing survived the fire, an old Polaroid photo. It was a picture of my father and what had to be my mother, standing in the woods smiling. Except nearly all of my mother had been burned out of the picture, except her arm which resembled a deformed animal's arm. My father's condition deteriorated. Attempts were made, But it was soon too dangerous for him to live at home, and so he was interred at a mental hospital. Years went by and with each visit I made he looked worse. And he never once looked at me. I shook my head and shined the flashlight forward, now completely ensconced in darkness. Despite it being summer, it was freezing. I pulled a jacket out of my backpack and continued onwards. I knew I was close now. I could feel it in my bones. At 25 I got the call from the hospital. It was the end. When I arrived, my father was nearly gone. My father with his eyes shut reached out for my face. I leaned forward and his shriveled fingers pulled me to his cracked lips so he could whisper his confession. I killed her. I moved my lips to his ear. Where is she? My father's lips trembled. He took a sputtering gasp, winced and then he told me where she was. And then he finally looked at me. For the first time in nearly a decade, he gazed upon me with those cloudy eyes, which immediately widened in terror. You've always looked so very much like her. He whimpered. And then he was gone. At last I found the grave. There was no headstone, but the great pale tree above it could not be mistaken. I plunged my shovel into the earth and dug until my hands were raw. Finally I finished. I heaved an exhausted sigh and tossed the shovel. The coffin was handmade, unnaturally wide and covered from top to bottom in the New Testament. I touched the lid and flinched. It was searing hot. Grabbing the shovel again, I pried the lid off, opened the coffin and shined the flashlight at my mother. Her teeth were like pointed knives, a whole mouth of razor-sharp canines with a silver bullet where her heart would be. An icy chill snaked from the top of my spine to the bottom of my toes. The flashlight dropped from my hands, plunging me into darkness as I screamed. Wings. The bones of great, spiky wings lay spread out above her shoulders. I turned heel and sprinted away blindly into the darkness of the woods. My chest burned but I did not stop, until at last, my knees buckled and I collapsed to the dirt. I squinted my eyes in the darkness, just barely able to make out the forest in the pale moonlight. And then I felt it. Behind both of my shoulder blades. It was like two burning needles were piercing through my skin.
My boyfriend confessed to cheating on me and now doesn't want me to blow up his life. I, 21 female, just found out my boyfriend, 24 male, cheated on me last Sunday. It happened when I felt something was off down there. I told him I would get STD tested despite only being with him for the last year. That seemed to scare him, so he ended up confessing he cheated on me 7 days ago. Even though he confessed, I managed to find and talk with a girl over the phone, who was an angel, and found out he was lying about every detail. He told me he was drunk. He wasn't. He said he didn't finish. He did finish inside her. He tried to make it look better than the reality of him calling her, inviting her over, and effing her by his own free will. He even tried to blame his friend. Had I not mentioned my privates burning, he would have never confessed. After hearing he was still lying when he was supposed to be confessing the truth, I turned to social media and posted all the compiled evidence, which was extremely damning. I even messaged his brother, sister, work friends, and anyone else close to him. I told them all he was a lying piece of shite that cheated on me and probably gave me an STD. I wanted to make him feel the same pain. I think humiliating him in front of the only people in his life is equally as damaging as being cheated on. I figured it was fair, that his actions have consequences. He believed confessing was the only way the relationship might have a chance. He said crying, "It took this to realize how immature and careless I've been during this relationship, but you're the only girl that's really loved me for who I am. I don't want to lose that." He has been begging me not only to forgive him and try to continue the relationship, but also begging me to delete the post, saying that it will cause him irreversible psychological damage. I feel like it's bold of him to ask me to delete the post knowing damn well he doesn't deserve anything from me, but also I think being cheated on was equally irreversible psychologically damaging. I'm most likely never going to talk to him again. However, is it true that once they've cheated they will cheat again? Would it be possible I can forgive him? Is it worth saving? I'm not sure if this post will make any sense. I just feel so raw and exhausted. I guess I just wanted to vent. Thank you for reading. Update. Thanks everyone for the comments. I wanted to add some context. We have been dating a year next week. Literally hundreds of people agree that this relationship is over, or should end. Despite showing him the post, he still believes that he could make it up to me and be the man that I deserve. Hours of being on the phone with him have ensued since the creation of this post. I've been physically sick thinking about the scenario replaying in my head. I'm too weak to even get out of bed. I really loved him, I guess. I wasn't looking for validation. I'm just trying to cope. I can't stop crying, and this was my first week of college ever. I spent all of the money I had to start this semester. I feel like my world is crumbling and it's all on me to make sure I'm okay by Monday for school. I just hope that I can keep myself together to go school and keep my motivation, as that's my priority. I had depression a few years ago and I hope that I can keep myself out of having an episode. I've had several past relationships, and a previous relationship of 5 years. This isn't the first heartbreak I've had. It's just frustrating always putting others above myself just to end up being treated like this.